I'm not really the person that does video essays, but Xenoblade Chronicles 3 left me with so many feelings and I just need an outlet. This was originally just going to be the world's longest Tumblr post, but y'all want me to do this, so this is on you. If you just want a quick rundown of my overall thoughts, it's an amazing game with a well-crafted battle system and world that's fun to explore, although I feel the best writing and character interactions are in the side content as the main story itself is lacking. Yes, I can recommend the game. If that's all you wanted to hear, then goodbye. For everyone else that wants to go further, I want to give a big spoiler warning. Practically all footage will be from the post-game, and I'm going to talk about the entire game, no holds barred. There will be no spoiler-free section. I'm also going to talk about some key parts of Xenoblade 1, 2, and yes, even X. You have been warned. You still with me? Good, because I'm not done yet. I want to give a mild trigger warning. This series does deal with suicidal ideation, but here there's a scene where a character actually commits suicide in front of everyone. It's not graphic, but I am going to be discussing it. Last thing to mention, most of my playthrough was done on version 1.1.0, with version 1.1.1 only coming out as I was wrapping up the last bit of content. This is a big project, and I wholly expect parts of it to be outdated before this video gets published, so keep in mind I'm speaking about my experience on these two versions without any DLC. Now that's out of the way, time to get into this. To start, for those that aren't familiar with me and wonder where I'm coming from, I like this series a normal amount. If you want a quick rundown of my thoughts on the previous games, I never played Gears, I only know bits and pieces about it. With Saga, I know the whole story, but have only played episode 1, and it was good. I love Cosmos, but Junior is my favorite.
Sayonara, baby.
I was playing Xenoblade 1 on the Wii, but then Definitive Edition got announced, so I never finished it. I played X first, so I have a hard time going back to this combat, even if I do love the characters and story. I did finish Future Connected though, and it was pretty weak. Xenoblade X is the first in the series I owned, and the best open world game I have ever played. I love it despite its many flaws. However, every time I go back to it, I never finish the story. Once is enough. Xenoblade 2 is my favorite game of all time, and I have over 600 hours in it. Hate me for liking the anime waifu game, but really the worst part was the tutorials. Lastly, the Torna DLC has my favorite quest in the series, and it beautifully builds upon 2's narrative, so of course I love it. Enough talk about the past though, you're here for the third game. So let's start with the presentation. To get the obvious part out of the way, yes, the music is outstanding. It's a Xeno game, so what did you expect? I wouldn't call it my favorite of the OSTs though. The area music is a lot more atmospheric, certainly fitting for the game, but nothing I really enjoyed listening to outside of playing. There aren't really songs that carry energy like Roaming the Wastes or Gower Plains. The tracks are still great, like the boat theme really didn't need to go that hard, but overall they're more somber and understated than previous games. Boss themes are still amazing though. Words That Never Reached You and In's themes are absolutely incredible. The Mobius themes slap, even if they were initially my favorite, but holy cow, they turned Drifting Soul into a battle theme, and it is incredible. People are talking about the Time to Fight remix, but Drifting Soul hit me so hard, it might be my favorite song here. There's no doubt in my mind these battle themes are top tier. Well, when they're not being ripped by the Chain Attack theme, which is also good. However, this has to be the best cutscene music we've gotten. The scores complemented their scenes so well and really enhanced the emotional impact. These are some of my favorite tracks in the game by far. I don't think I'll ever get over the way Feelings Risen to the Sky hit me. What's cooler though is they kind of invented a new sound for this game. See, flutes will give off different sounds depending on a multitude of factors. So Monolith self-designed custom flutes, replicas from the ones in-game, and used them to record the audio. That's just really cool. I also like the art direction in this game. The graphics and style in which they're presented are just stunning. The world is vibrant with fascinating, unique landscapes that Xenoblade is known for. Even with the colonies, they all have their own Piranha's design that sets them apart from each other. I kept stopping to take screenshots because the world is just so pretty and detailed. And unlike 2 and DE, you're not going to run into issues where the resolution will majorly drop. Or, well, at least as often. Apparently, 3 uses temporal upsampling to help performance. It smooths out the graphics using data from the previous frame, meaning it can push a higher resolution without a big performance hit. It's genuinely great and a heck of a lot better than the sharpening filter 2 had. For characters, the facial designs and hairstyles all look great as usual. I am especially partial to Noah's ponytail, and Mio's little braid is adorable. Not to mention how Uni's wings fade into her hair color, that's an excellent touch. Everyone's features and colors come together very well and are complemented by the art style. Like, the effect on the eyes is absolutely beautiful. If you want to talk body types, I like a good amount of the differing shapes we got. Some characters like Uni, Alexandria, Ashira, Noah, Lance, and so on all look great. A large majority of the characters have well-balanced proportions and are consistent. There's still exaggerated features, but they don't feel in conflict with the style. That said, there are a few outliers I'm not the most keen on, like Senna's super wide hips on her otherwise narrow build just don't look very good, and Monica's proportions are a bit too extreme for me. Although, while it isn't much, there is some variety in the female body types, which is something I wish there was a little more of with the male characters. Practically all of them are just tall and thin with a big chest and six-pack. About the only ones I can think of that don't fit that profile are the children. Like, even Tyon is ripped, and he fights by magically throwing paper at his enemies. I wouldn't call it bad, and the male characters we get do look pretty good. I just wish we got some more variation in their shapes like we got with the girls. As for the clothes, the designs of the main cast are a bit toned down this time around, much to many fan artists' delight. There is something to say about simplicity. A good design doesn't need to be complicated, and that's a role I implement into my own designs. But Xenoblade as a series is known for its complex outfits. Shelf space clothing, Pyra, Elma, all of them have a lot going on. Taste is subjective, of course, but we went from the complicated yet stunning design of a character like Laura to a boy in a red jacket and combat boots. Certainly not bad, but not what I was expecting from this series. I will say the more modern-looking attire like the jackets Mio and Uni wear stuck out to me and seemed like an odd choice since the first trailer. It's this militaristic fantasy world, everyone's wearing fancy armor plates with flowy capes. Then Uni strolls up in a hoodie. Some of these outfits feel like they can be found at your local Kohl's rather than a Xeno game. I realized that was intentional, and I'm not saying these outfits don't fit them or that they're bad. Heck, basically every JRPG's main cast can easily be plucked from a crowd. It's just a fashion they haven't done before. I suppose I'm neutral in the designs. They look fine and work, but I miss the complexity and fictional fashion of previous games. And while this isn't about the DLC, I just want to throw this in here. The swimsuit designs are bland. I like Uni and Tyon's okay, but everyone's are just so basic, especially when compared to the creative swimsuits 2 got. Like, I know it's hard to compete with Rex's little wrist shark or the irony of best girl fan Tora, but Lance and Senna are even more covered up than they are in their base clothing. That's not what swimsuit DLC is for. Maybe they wanted to tone it down due to 2's backlash, but they lost a lot of charm along the way. The Ouroboros forms are also just okay. Noah's is supposed to be reminiscent of the Bionis, and I think Mio's is the Cosmos reference, but I just didn't find the designs themselves very interesting. In general, I think the Agni forms are better, having stark color contrast with black and white as opposed to being mostly black, but I also found they just had more going for them. Senna shares Newt's secondary detached arms thing, except hers doubles as a hammer, and I do really like Tyon's design. The whole flowy robe and magician motif is really fitting for him. Meanwhile, the Kavesi, Uni is some sort of sexy bug thing, and Lance almost looks like an artifice? Maybe I'm missing something. There's nothing really wrong with the designs, I just didn't find them that cool. With the heroes, some of them have great designs, a few of my favorites being Alexandria, Juniper, and Melia, but of course, Gray, Isert, and Ashira are also pretty high up there. I don't really think there's a bad design among them, although Sagiri's is... okay, maybe one outlier, but her Pharaon is cool. As for the character models themselves, lots of the artwork translated into 3D really well. I can't think of a single character that looks starkly better in their official art than in-game. Even background NPCs were given quite good models and don't look out of place compared to the heroes. They seem almost as rigged as the main cast and do a decent job with facial expressions. Which, this game does a really good job with animation and facial expressions. The quests and cutscenes are made even better by the fact lip syncing is different in English and Japanese. It's such a minor thing, but it makes a big difference. The voice acting is also great in this game. There's not a single bum performance. Everyone is expressive and feels natural in their role. They really do a very good job with the lines they're given. Which is good because there are a lot of voice lines in this game, far more than the previous titles. While the cutscenes are about the same overall length, every hero quest is completely voiced and they aren't in short supply. It's great! Only real complaint is you can't go back and re-watch the text box dialogue. What's also really cool is the characters talk outside of battle and cutscenes. Oftentimes it's to point out something in the world such as a cave or ladder, but other times they make comments on the story or current quest you're doing. This is a bit of a double-edged sword though. Oftentimes the voice line is cut off by your objective triggering or an enemy aggroing on you. It sucks because I want to hear this conversation, but now the only way to do so without replaying the entire game is to roll back my save, which I'm not doing. If the voice lines kept playing and were audible and subtitled while the cutscene was loading or while battling, that'd be a massive improvement. That said, you're going to be hearing
I'm the girl with the gall.
a lot. Sure, in previous games, the same post-battle quotes would be repeated a good amount, but it wasn't,
Hear that, Noah? Lance wants something a bit meatier.
or
You see? This is our path to the future.
every other fight. Here, it feels like they recorded 2 lines for each character, if that, then called it a day, which is in stark contrast to 2 having abundance with all the rare blades. While the hero characters do have post-battle dialogue, they're just single lines. There aren't really conversations like there were in previous games, which is a shame. Additionally, I found the voice filters on the Mobius and Ouroboros to sometimes be too distorted. I think the effect need to be turned down because without subtitles, there would be multiple scenes I couldn't make out the dialogue on. I was also rather disappointed at first that Adam Howden didn't have a part in the game. However, they did find a spot for him as a Nopon art stage in the DLC. Makes me happy because it wouldn't feel like a Xenoblade without him. Though that's about all I have to say here, so moving on to the next category, gameplay.
I'm sorry. I can't go easy on you.
I just want to take a moment to praise the fact that you have multiple save files again. I miss these a lot in 2 and X. And they renamed Territorial Ropart. How could they do this? At least Wuho Gonzalez is still himself. Anyways, with the combat, it's slow to start. Like, slower than 2. In order to set Master Arts, you first have to unlock them from other classes, and then have to reach a certain level to unlock the Equip slot. The 3rd slot unlocks at level 40, which for context, the final boss is level 75. You'll be more than halfway through the adventure before you have access to a full art palette, making it so you're just sitting there waiting for your arts to recharge a lot. In 1 and X, you could move around, set yourself up for positional art while still auto-attacking. 2 had pouch items which refilled your art sum without auto-attacking, and stutter stepping was a thing. Neither of those exist here. You can't auto-attack while you move, meaning your Agging arts won't get a charge. Not to mention the window between auto-attacks is pretty big, and often the Kavesi arts have too long cooldowns to prevent you from just standing and waiting. Cooldowns do shrink as you level up the classes, but you are going to be changing classes a lot in order to get a variety of Master Arts. You can use silver Nopon coins to bypass this, but they aren't abundant enough to make it viable, meaning there's not really a good way to speed up combat in the early game. But I think the slow start is one reason the HP sponge complaints have returned. I felt it too, but only for the first few chapters. You don't have the ability to add more accessories to make your character stronger, you don't have access to many fusion arts, nor the ability to even set them. You just aren't able to deal the numbers you can later game, and it's not a level issue. Of course, it getting easier as you go along can also be from getting the hang of the mechanics, but they ease you into the system much too slowly. When it does get going though, oh boy is it great! auto attack canceling, art canceling, dashing for a positional art, finding master arts with good synergy, using fusion arts, doing driver combos, and figuring just the right time to use your Ouroboros form all flow so well together. Building OP setups and executing them is so satisfying. This system does so much right and is the highlight of the game for me. There's a lot of layers I can't even begin to properly explain. Like, talent arts are back, but they fill up via role actions. You get the gauge up with attackers views of positional art, healers when using buffs, and tanks drawing aggro. There's more, obviously, but it is easy to know at a glance what arts will add to it. However, some classes desperately need role action master arts if they want to use their talent art. In particular, Royal Summoner only has one positional art, period. Some classes have a good amount of role action arts, but long cooldowns, making master arts even more important. You have to keep all that in mind when building your setup. I only learned in post-game there's an auto setup option for those who quickly want to fill the gem, art, and accessory slots. So, might not be the build you want, but an option if you don't want to mess with menus a bunch. You can totally spend way too much time in the menu here. You will be swapping classes a lot. It's the biggest thing in this combat system. There's a good number of classes to experiment with, too. My favorites have been Full Metal Jaguar, Martial Artist, and Incursor. Numbers go brrrr. Attackers are my favorite, but healers have gotten extremely buffed since the previous games and are now amongst the strongest classes. Yes, I am looking at you, Miss can spread invincibility, but also passing power charge to the whole party is great. Most have useful arts or buffs as well as healing, but healers are the only ones that can revive allies, help others up from a top or days, and are all around great support. You will basically need to be running at least 2 healers at all times. No matter what, a party member will get KO'd in basically every fight. 10 levels above the enemy, someone is still gonna die. And if your healers die, give up. Just give up. They had a dedicated button for that. You can swap which character you control mid-fight, but I found the AI generally does okay on its own. It does spam art, so swapping around isn't going to give you a fresh palette. Plus, the multitasking and memory required to learn what everyone has equipped when you're changing classes every few hours is just too much for my brain, so I mostly stick to one character. It does have a lot of utility and is nice to have, it just wasn't something I found myself doing all that often. Chain attacks, I'm slightly torn on. On one hand, they are super engaging. I chuckle with glee seeing the numbers go up. On the other, they're easily the longest chain attacks in the series where you're just watching the animations play. Oftentimes, I know it'd be optimal to start one and overkill an enemy due to the bonus XP and CP, but I just want to get on with it and spend 30 seconds spamming Rs rather than several minutes watching the same flashy animation to get the overkill. I have actually taken advantage of that cancel chain attack button because I really don't want to sit through it when I could be doing other stuff. That said, I think they're my favorite chain attacks in the series. The combo, strategically figuring which characters to use each round while your entire plan for the attack is bound by reactivation RNG and your hero order showing up. God damn it, Fiona, why didn't your order come up? I could have had 2 extra rounds! Still, the amount of maniacal laughter that escaped me as I set an enemy up for a super painful combo is unreal. They're long and, like the rest of the combat, takes a while to get going, but when they do, there is nothing more satisfying. Until the enemy lives with 3 health. Like, come on, I could have had more CP! The combat does fall back on an issue from 1, though. There is a character who is definitively better to control than everyone else. It's Noah. He's the only one that gets access to Unlimited Sword, and it is unbelievably broken. The AI will never cancel attacks, thus getting these powerful arts out way slower and with a lower damage ratio. Oftentimes, in 9 seconds you get with it, it's enough to do significant damage and finish the enemy off in a chain attack. Let me tell you, final round, power charge, Lucky 7 smash, rips through health bars quicker than Nintendo files DMCAs. Like, this is pure dopamine! To top it off, Lucky 7 also has a chance to inflict doom on every hit, which obviously doesn't work on uniques or bosses, but you can look at a level 100 enemy and just win. Why would I play as anyone else? Oh, I almost forgot to mention the Ouroboros forms. It's basically invincible art spam, with the caveat being you can't use the same art 2 times in a row. They were pretty strong and quite useful, but I found myself using them less and less as the game went on because they just aren't as fun as the regular combat. In other news, launch is no longer animation-based. Now you can get all those sweet damage bonuses and chain attacks without the enemy falling before your second character gets in there. Oh, did I mention you can fight in deep water now? No more sheathing your weapon if you take 1 step too far into a lake. An NPC said you get more experience in battling the water, but I also don't know if that statement holds water. And yes, the combat is indeed just as noisy, if not noisier than 2, as now you have a total of 7 characters screaming. Only here, their lines don't overlap nearly as much. I don't mind the noisy combat. At this point, it's part of the charm of the series. Although having that many characters dealing damage at once did make it a little hard to see what was going on sometimes. The screen was completely engulfed in numbers. All that said, I don't know if I like it more than the combat in 2. It's very good, easily my favorite thing about this game, but playing different blades and doing fusion combos was super engaging. In 3, I loved all the art and class combos, but I didn't really enjoy playing defenders much, and healers were by far the most boring class, as roughly 2 out of 3 of their main arts are generally just heals or buffs. If you don't have them set that way, have fun barely building up your talent art and watching your glass party die. Of course, combat is only part of what Xenoblade is known for. The other part is the expansive world. Ionius is so beautiful and fun to explore, but I think we've finally reached the point where I'm saying it's too big. I believe they said it's 5 times the size of 2's, and I can believe it. Areas are vast, and getting run speed upgrades is not a quick or easy process. Exploring is rewarding, but I also feel you move a bit too slow for the size. I actually kept instinctively clicking the left stick to try and run like you do in X. Either condensing it by about 10 to 15% or making the initial running speed faster would have been nice. I like exploring in this game, I really do, but the size doesn't feel like a marvel as much as it feels like the game doesn't respect my time. The base of Agnes Castle is so huge, I hate having to go there because I'm just walking along empty hallways big enough to drive a boat through. Is this where that 5 times the walkable size of 2 went? Just making the hallways wider? There are also quite a few areas, such as the Pentalus and Upper Edia region, where it's practically a hallway throughout and doesn't leave a lot of room to explore. Maybe that's one reason I love the Cadencia region so much. Having the freedom to go anywhere in a boat just gets me itching to fill in the map. Being able to reach almost any place you can see, the sprawling distinctive landscapes, finding chests, landmarks, secret areas, uniques, there's something so special about that keeps me coming back to this series. There's some areas here that are entirely optional to explore where even quests won't ask you to go. Now, those are some of my favorite areas in the game, but it's something I kinda don't like. In 2, the quest took you to almost every corner of Alrest, showing you places you might not have found otherwise and kind of acted like a world tour. Here, while some will still take you to new areas, they're overall more centralized, leaving rather significant chunks of the map underutilized. DLC quests might remedy this in the future, and it is a very minor thing that didn't really impact my enjoyment while exploring. It was just something I missed. Although, while this doesn't come up much, there are a few places in the game they simply won't let you go until you progress the story. That's true of basically every Xenoblade game, but this is the most I've actively encountered invisible walls that kept me in a set area. Most notable to me was while I was doing quests in Colony Tau. One took me along the route of the main story until it reached a branch. I wanted to follow the quest and go left, but it literally wouldn't let me until I rested the campsite and did another hour of main story content. While not huge, this is just not an issue I ever remember running into in previous games. They also limit your ability to explore via traversal skills, all of which are obtained through hero quests. While technically only 2 are required to finish the game, exploring at least 3 of them is rather difficult. You can't even climb vines until you complete Valdi's quest, cutting off many places I wanted to go when the world seemingly opened up. It is a better system than the field skills of 2, but they just bothered me for the first couple regions. In the previous games, your reason to return to old areas was for quests, items, and uniques. In 3, it's because they decided you shouldn't explore it yet. Ionios is full of fun finds and interesting landscapes to traverse, but sometimes it felt like the game was trying to limit me to a very narrow path, especially in the first 40 or so hours, and that's just not a feeling this series has ever given me. As for the locales, some struck me like Breath of the Wild hit Zelda fans, such as seeing the ruins of Fon Samaima and the broken teleport at Alcamoth. The areas are mashups, but I can't quite figure out what they're all mashups of. Rabby Flats is just a big grassy area, and I can't tell what Capricorn Peak is based from either. It is nothing from Valak Mountain or even Tantal, it's just snow and no other theme. Rather disappointed, especially when the concept art for it looks so interesting. And then they just straight up threw Danga Desert in here, like it's not mashed with anything. I guess they wanted some Torna rep, but Torna sank 500 years before the events of 2? Shouldn't this not be here? Also, it's entirely optional and easily one of the most vast and open areas in the game. I like it a lot, but only after you get the skill from Teach's quest. It's rough without it. In general, the matchup themes are fine. Aside from a few ruins, they really didn't leave an impact on me, but I also think that it has to do with all of them being shown off in trailers. They showed off literally every place in the game, minus Origin. They didn't leave much to be surprised at as far as areas went. But I want to bring up an issue with the map itself. Locations aren't visible anymore. Only things that show up are places you can skip travel to, like tombstones and landmarks. This might not seem like much of a problem at first, but I ran into a few quests where they told me the rough location to find the collectibles I needed, but they gave me a location name. Even though the quest navigation is great, it would have made my life easier to be able to see where a location is on the map. Despite the gripes I have, I sat down, explored, and defeated unique monsters for 4 hours straight, and I'm still down to do more. I had a great time in this world. I don't know if it stacks up to the previous games, and doubt it can compare to X's. Mira was on an entirely different level. If you want to talk performance, let's be real, it's a miracle anything runs on the Switch. But the game runs okay. It does use dynamic resolution, and it's noticeable, mostly in combat in big areas like Aretha Sea. That said, it does look clearer than 2 in DE because it isn't putting those pixels through a sharpening filter. That with the temporal upsampling makes the resolution drops less noticeable. There are frame issues, and the Cadencia region is especially bad due to the absolutely ginormous map. Sometimes I felt like the game was writing at 20 FPS. Quests also seem to dip the frame rate quite a bit, and it became pretty jarring after a while. I did also notice a few drops during cutscenes, but that was minor enough I'd say it didn't really matter. Oddly enough, another issue it suffers with is music stuttering. Sometimes during battle, the music will just pause for about half a second, most of the time the rest of the game not missing a beat. I did run into 2 crashes, funnily enough, both happened while I was recording. The first one, I think I talked to too many NPCs and it must have caused some memory error or something, I really have no idea. Second one I just found funny. Like, that is one way to know out of a conversation. The crashing wasn't a big deal though, since the game autosaves frequently. Although it appears there's a memory leak, which is what's believed to be at the root of these issues. Closing and reopening the game does help with performance problems, but let's be real, it's still the Switch, so that can only do so much. I only really ran into one big bug, and that's why I kept getting kicked out of combat with this unique in Aretha Sea. Aside from that, I didn't really have any other issues. Enemies are also loaded in from pretty far away with their animations missing frames, similar to Pokemon Legends Arceus. Unlike that game, however, the draw distance is really high. The only times I ever ran into issues where enemies practically spawn on top of me was in Aretha Sea while driving the Bravery. You just go faster than the game can load. Overall, I'd say on a technical level, it's pretty sound and easily surpasses all the previous Xeno games on Switch. Now that's out there, I want to nitpick a bit. To iterate, these are nitpicks and do not ruin or largely impact the experience, just would be nice if some were patched. Heroes will level up with you, even outside of your party, so thank God no X situation here, but their level is tied to their character. Kinda. Once in a while, they all seem to sync up, but I haven't figured out the trigger. Also now, if you want to use or lose XP at a rest spot, there's a button to immediately set your entire party at the max possible level, which is great! But there's no button to immediately change your entire party to a specific level. I mean, if you only want to take 2 levels, you have to change each character manually. It's weird because they streamlined it, but only partly. You will get over-leveled doing quests. It's not about taking bonus XP, it's the fact that many quests have you fighting enemies oftentimes higher level than the next boss. You just level up super quickly. I had to start avoiding any food that boosted XP because I was getting so ahead. Not that avoiding it actually mattered, but I didn't know that. I really wish they gave you the option to level down, but you don't unlock that until you defeat the final boss. Why can't I just make myself weaker when I want, like in DE? On top of that, there's too many enemies, or at least too many hostile ones. You'll be hard-pressed to find an area you can walk through without getting nearly a dozen enemies on your tail. It can be hard to hear the area theme because almost every 2 steps, the battle theme starts playing as you get chased again. There is no escape. There's going to be 5 enemies crossing your path at any given time, and it's just too much. While I think the AI is generally pretty good, such as healers usually reviving a fallen healer before anyone else, they have a problem with the ring. There will be a regenerate ring, character in the red, and they'll just stand next to it. I've also noticed the AI isn't great at refreshing these rings. The art will be charged, but they'll just be auto-attacking rather than setting down a buff. That said, I've also had the AI dash off a cliff, so maybe it isn't that smart. The equipment menu. After all the storied options they patched into 2 in DE, they reverted back to 5 here. This is a big annoyance anytime you want to change your setup, especially later game when you might have 300 accessories. You can't sort by healing, what helps crits, attack, raise HP or agility. You can't even sort by class category. What makes this even worse is when you do decide to change your gear, it puts your cursor back at the top of the list, leaving you to scramble and find your place again. This game actually has really good tutorials, but they are very hand-holdy. They literally lock your controls so you can't do anything but what it wants you to do right that second. For some, it makes you do a certain action with each character individually, so you'll be doing the same thing 3 to 6 times with the same text box at every page. Once it's done, you can't mess in the menus anymore. The only button that will work is B to close out of the menu. While it's not a huge deal, it certainly gets annoying. I suppose after the big uproar with 2, this was an overcorrection. It is better to have too many tutorials than risk that situation again. While I also never use it, the tip section has an explanation for literally everything, as well as a training ground to test stuff out. It is very informative and definitely appreciated. Chain attack theme. I like this music. When battling a regular enemy, I enjoy listening to it pop up. I do not enjoy overriding the glorious You All Know Our Names finale or boss themes though. Some intense, heartfelt musically playing, then
We are more than capable.
it's only disabled in one fight, and that is the final boss. Except in the last phase, they forgot to turn it off there. The rumors. Okay, I've just been calling them that because they're similar to X's rumors. Those little yellow eye marks. It's cool walking around and overhearing stuff only for it to unlock an interesting campsite discussion. But with so many colonies and them being so big, it can be very hard to find them. Sometimes rumors are even at Nopon caravans out in the world. On top of lots starting quests and different ones showing up after certain quests and story events, having these icons marked on the map would have made a big difference. As is, it's incredibly annoying staying through long load screens and running around colonies aimlessly trying to find a corner where an NPC might be hiding. I just want some indication that there's something here for me because I've missed a lot and have had to Google where to find these rumors way more than a few times. Judging by the amount of folks asking, it seems I'm not the only one. Talking to NPCs when they're close to other NPCs. For some reason, it doesn't default to talking to the one you're closest to, which means you will frequently speak to the NPC that's next to the one you wanted. It's very minor, but an annoyance nonetheless. There is nothing to spend your money on. Like at all. I have over 3 million I have no idea what to do with. The only things you can buy are meals at canteens, the occasional collectible from a Nopon, and accessories. Obviously, you're going to get loads of accessories from containers and monsters while out in the world, so there's rarely ever a reason to buy any. Banana can also cook meals for you using collectibles, although it was bugged in version 1.1.0, meaning you didn't get the effects. So again, no real reason to buy food, which is cheap as is. The collectibles from the Nopon merchants aren't that costly either, even the fabricators are barely a drop in the bucket. Honestly, about the biggest money sink in the game is this Nopon you can pay 10k to, and he might make it rain, which is sometimes required for a few quests. That jerk took my money 4 times before making it storm. Like, bro, I don't care about the money, but I had to mash through those text boxes again. And I think that wraps up my gameplay thoughts. It's fun for sure, definitely worth it for the hours of enjoyment you can get, but there are some minor issues that plague it. Now the meat and potatoes of this video. It's time to talk about the main story. This game has some really long cutscenes. 1 and 2 had a few as well, but I feel it's more frequent here. Right now, here's a warning. Don't ever say, I will finish this chapter before I go to bed, because you will lose. Chapter 5 basically throws 2 hours of cutscenes at you, and I can't tell you how many people complain they didn't get to sleep until 3 to 5 a.m. because they thought they could finish it. I was warned and played that part in the afternoon, thank God. This is a snack game though. Grab some popcorn and just sit back. You might be there a while. Okay, I've been kind of dying to talk about the characters and narrative, so here we go. I'm not going to go over every scene, but to keep everyone up to speed, I'll give small story summaries between what I want to talk about. And yes, I am going to be pronouncing it Zed because that's a pronunciation the game uses, even though I'm American and would normally say Z. I will, however, not be calling Omega Omega because that's just wrong. Now, let's start with Chapter 1. Within the first hour, we get Lance and Uni arguing butt-ass naked. Put that on my did not expect list. You, got quite a view there, Noah. Jokes aside, I think the introduction cutscenes do a good job of setting up the world and its rules. Although I feel the chapter is just slow. You start in the heat of the action like in 1, but then it just slams on the brakes and throws a 15-minute flashback of Kavessi's childhood at you. It does introduce you to how these people live, and there's a lot of setup, quite a bit of it essential to the story, just it's a really slow way to open a game. Moving on, they're sent off the next day on a new mission that's a bit sketch. Both sides shoot down an unidentified vessel before the two nations begin brawling. Noah's unit, which includes the non-combatant Riku for some reason, heads for their target. It's there they see Guernica and run into Mio's squad. Maybe because this was shown off heavily in trailers, but even rewatching it, I think the inciting incident could have been better. Guernica picks these kids after recognizing Noah's blade and just pins them down and tells them to stop fighting. D shows up to kill Guernica, and the six of them work together to save someone that's been shooting their allies. Noah, for some reason, is instantly bonded with Mio and wants to protect her. Guernica gives them the powers, and D just stops attacking for a moment to briefly explain what Ouroboros is, only for Guernica to give somewhat of an explanation in the next scene. It all just feels so clumsy. It's like they knew what they wanted and needed to happen, but not how to write it. That's not to say I think it's bad or that there's nothing good here. I really do like Uni's moment in Noah's speech, but this whole scenario feels awkward. After D leaves and Gerda gives them some vague info and dies, everyone just goes home. Of course they get chased away from the colonies and come back, so Noah decides they should all work together and head to Sword March on Gerdica's word that it'll let them live. Them just being thrust into this and needing to accept it lacks the character-defining strength it would otherwise have if fighting against an unjust world was an active choice. I really think it could have been reworked and improved, and that goes for more than just the scenario. The last bit of cutscenes in this chapter takes roughly 15 to 20 minutes when it really doesn't need to, which brings me to my first actual problem. I feel the pacing is poor. There's a lot of talk in this game, and while there are good character interactions, I just don't think many forward the plot, give relevant information, or are that entertaining. These scenes often drag on, feel pad out like they could easily be condensed and just aren't. So many scenes are just needlessly long, and that's how even though there's almost 14 hours of cutscenes, it still feels short. Not a lot happens in most of these scenes, and it doesn't add much, if anything, to the plot or characters. It was a problem I had with X, and it's a problem I have here. This issue persists into the next chapter, where I feel the beginning is bogged down by the characters being like, well, this is awkward, before they just get over it and start acting like a team. The transition from enemies to friends is barely existent. They go from begrudgingly working together to mild complaining, then they change into each other's classes, and they're all great buddies. All within about 3 small cutscenes. Nothing to really build their trust, no serious hurdles they need to overcome in their relationships, they're just a working team. You really don't feel the tension this situation is supposed to have. This is what I mean by they knew what they wanted to happen, but just not how to write it. To keep up with the story here, getting to Sword March is a bit of an urgency as Mio only has 3 months left on her mark. Once that time is up, she'll die. On the way, Noah decides they shouldn't kill anymore and they run into Colony 4, led by the Kavessi's childhood savior, Ethel. She's under the control of Mobius and using the colony to hunt them. The gang run, but get cornered. The consul steps in, transforms into Mobius, and uses the energy of the flame clock to heal himself, stealing the lives from the soldiers bound to it in the process. With some hesitation and as a last resort, Noah gets a risky idea to break the clock. It's actually a moment of his I really like. He's seriously willing to gamble with the lives of everyone, and it's a choice he doesn't make lightly. Thankfully, he's the protagonist, so it works, albeit messy enough to almost get him and Mio killed, but this pushes Lance and Senna to awaken their Ouroboros form with Uni and Taion following right behind them. The clock doesn't break under their Ouroboros attacks though, leading Node to decide to use his special sword, Lucky 7. It's a legendary weapon Riku gave him when he was a kid. He used his blades as sheath to conceal its power until the time was right. Which after chapter 6 is every single fight if you have capable hands. But with the clock shattered and everyone freed, the console can't use the irises to control them anymore. Although that's one of the last few times this tactic gets used. It becomes a rarity after this point. Considering how much it was utilized in the beginning, it's really surprising that it just goes away. Even in gameplay, you can befriend colonies, consoles show up like, how dare you be nice to them, and do nothing. Like, you could literally just mind control them. But after that speech about not killing anyone earlier, they kill the console. Remember, murder is only okay if it's a government official. Noah says so. Still sends him off though, he's not at the point of no mercy. Yet. Oh, and Ethel's fine too. She completely remembers these now grown kids she helped 7 years ago. But now that Ethel is chill and head for the castle to report, Uni finds her own dead body and has a flashback to how she died. With the mud puppets being introduced later this chapter, I seriously thought they were gonna do a twist about Uni not really being alive, just another puppet. I will admit though, the cycle thing makes more sense. I'll go into more detail about this later because right now, Taion's backstory takes the center stage and it is magnificent. The setup for this is great. We're shown a flashback of Taion's backstory at the beginning, his relationship with Nimue, the reckless plan he was pressured into, that he proposed and ultimately led to her death. Then it gets recycled in the most fucked up and glorious way possible. They get ambushed with smoke bombs, just like Taion's colony in the past. They make their escape in a water channel, the same one where Nimue told him to live. Once they get out of the caves and into the open, they're attacked by Taion's old commander. Isard really did recreate the worst day of Taion's life just to trigger him. This is so messed up and genuinely one of my favorite concepts to come out of this game. It is played so well. Taion's raw emotions and frankly ruthless behavior once he finally takes control of the Ouroboros is astounding. He toys with Isard like a cat does with a mouse, something I never would have expected of him. Taion, the normally level-headed and cautious one, is acting out of such pain, it sells this part alone. And he isn't alone. Senna also takes her Ouroboros form to protect him, as does Mio. Noah stabs the Phoronis clock and puts it out of commission, thus ending Isard's assault. In the end, Taion is just so distraught by this situation that he willingly offers up his life to Isard. This hits all the right beats. The voice acting, the expressions, the choreography, the music, when the characters say nothing at all, it comes together for a beautifully crafted segment. It's so emotionally charged and from a character you wouldn't expect to be so emotional. But that's not the real Isard, just a mud puppet that Amobius fashioned using his mind. Enter Yorin, their childhood friend who died in his second term. Maybe because I got Xenosaga Testament vibes right from the beginning, but I figured out it was Yorin way before the reveal. That said, he does a good job shaking the Kavesi's beliefs and stirring up that guilty conscience in Lance. But with his exit here, that's also the last we see of his mud puppets. It's never brought up again, despite being a very interesting power that can easily be used for more emotional moments. Feels like a missed opportunity. To go back to Taion though, the follow-up with him finding the real Isard and Taion completely brushing everything under the rug to save him that grief is really a great topper for this chapter. This made Taion my favorite character. I'm actually a bit sad that Isard is a good guy because he made one hell of a villain. His lines, his delivery, his face, his motives, it was all so good! As opposed to the other villains we have in this game. That's getting a bit ahead though. Isard ends up giving back Nimue's old watch, but requests Taion buries it in a specific spot. Spoilers! He never does that. With everyone okay and Taion's story mostly wrapped up, we're never gonna talk about the watch again, I mean seriously. With everyone okay and Taion's story mostly wrapped up, Noah decided to send off Jay's mud monsters and... Okay, I'm not arguing against sending them, but Noah's reasoning is just wrong. Like, you didn't kill them, Jay did, with a knife in the back. The Phoronis laser, don't you remember? Like, there weren't even foot soldiers in that boss fight, just Avis Levs. Honestly, Uni was right. Offseers are just so much. All the time. Although, for the ending, we're left with Lance wallowing in his own guilt, angry and confused. Noah tries to talk him down, and he has the right words, but the wrong touch for Lance's current emotional state. Though I really like this moment between them, showing their different thought processes and very subtly foreshadowing that, indeed, Ouroboros and Mobius draw their power from a similar source. It's a good way to kickstart Lance's arc. There's so much good in this chapter, seeing how affected Lance is by Yorin, his and Noah's exchange, and literally everything about Taion. Like, massive applause to his VA, he really sells it. The writing is still pretty bogged down by them always taking the long way in conversations, but what a chapter ending! Going forward, Ethel going to the castle went really far south. The Queen is going to use this weapon called the Annihilator to wipe Colony 4 off the map if Ethel doesn't comply in killing Ouroboros. With her colony at stake, she's not gonna hold back. Meanwhile, Noah slips and falls on his ass. Okay, I just thought that was funny. It was about the first good chuckle the story gave me, so I wanted to include it. The second good chuckle?
Gasp! Oh, the food's completely gone. Don't tell me someone scoffed the whole lot.
The slow pan as everyone has the same thought just kills me. Her, Riku, and Lance all arguing in the background throughout the next part of the scene is just so great. I absolutely love Manana.
Manana will have retribution!
Anyways, back to serious stuff. Ethel and Kamaravi are told to work together despite being on opposing nations and are given special Pharaonises just to kill Ouroboros. Ethel, meanwhile, steals plans of the castle, gives them to her lieutenant, who passes the whole story on to Ouroboros. Noah says that's no good, so now the party is making another detour to destroy the Annihilator. Meanwhile, Mio's starting to have issues. Twice her legs have given out on her, and now she's dropping things, apparently thanks to her life soon ending. This added stress causes her to lash out at Noah, and kinda rightfully so. While he has the right intentions, they keep getting distracted and wasting time that she hasn't got. Her only hope to live longer lies in Sword March, and they're running around liberating colonies. It's certainly important, but it's her time they're being liberal with. I really like this little interaction and how it leads to them apologizing in the morning. Mio briefly explains her history of losing Miyabi, her flute previously belonging to her. She wants Noah to have it so it'll be used a bit longer, leading to them trading flutes, and it's incredibly sweet. It highlights the chemistry they have as they grow to further understand each other. That said, we're in chapter 4, and this is about the most we've gotten in Mio's history so far. I like this scene, what it stood for between the two, but it definitely would have been more impactful had her backstory been more fleshed out by this point. She's a lead character, and we know very little about her by the game's halfway mark. After that bit, though, they continue towards the castle, but they get ambushed by Ethel and Kamaravi along the way. They fight, but not to the console's satisfaction, so they try to use the Iris control on Kamaravi. He objects to this by ripping his eye out. With neither of them bound to Mobius' control anymore, they decide to live out their dream and duel one last time before the consoles drain their life via the Pharaonis clocks. With Kamaravi finally making an appearance, can I just say that by the trailers, I expected to see more from him? We see a flashback of his fight with Ethel, him sacrifice a bunch of his soldiers to trick an enemy, then a talk with Ethel, and lastly he fights and dies. I really assumed to have a bigger presence, but he gets completely shafted. This is another problem I have. The game made so many characters and a good amount don't get properly developed because they either lack screen time or are just never given a chance. Many of the deaths ring hollow because you're just not given enough of a reason to develop an attachment to them. Basically all the consoles suffer from this. It's even worse for Agnian characters as the central focus is Noah and the background is essentially all through the eyes of a Kavesi. We don't even get to see Mio's backstory until mid-chapter 6. That's just too long, especially for the main female lead. The simple fact is the Kavesi characters are generally given more background in development, especially in the beginning. I think the better solution would have been to have multiple cuts in Chapter 1 going between the nations, get the player to have a feel for each team and military before they joined forces instead of just focusing on Noah. I wonder if that was something that was scrapped as the data mine graphics have level up profiles for the Agnian characters in their military gear, something you can't see in-game. The SE art book also has art of Mio as a regular child, just like Noah in the beginning, but of course the design is unused. Makes me wonder how much of this mishmash story was left on the cutting room floor. All that said, it doesn't take away from the gloriousness of this scene.
You'll ride in agony before we...
Mio just deck protects them! How did she get so strong? I do gotta love how afterwards everyone's like, Noah's gonna try and talk us out of murder. And Noah's just like, no way, I'll join you. Remember, murder is only okay if it's your government officials. So, the Mobies that are watching over Ethel and Kamaravi interlinked, ignored the warning beeps, and stayed in it too long. This eventually paralyzes them, drawing the black fog into their core and causes the annihilation effect. Basically, they go boom. After setting off Ethel and Kamaravi, but not the consoles, now he's at the point of no mercy, their detour continues and they reach Keva's castle. After getting their sneak on in a place with enemies at literally every corner, they finally reach the Annihilator. Of course, D and J are waiting. Mobius had a hunch they'd come destroy it, and they were right. Although, if I can just say, regarding the post-fight scene, seeing the Ouroboroses get sliced to pieces was just shocking. Like, we hadn't seen this happen up to this point. It was established they could regenerate as long as their core was intact. They just start tossing these torsos around without warning. It's a little disturbing, honestly. They clearly feel the pain, but since it doesn't affect their actual bodies, it's open season on limbs. It just feels needlessly torturous. It's got me asking if it was really necessary. I mean, Blades could also regenerate from any injury in 2, and they never cut off an arm to prove that point. But what else we get here is Uni's fear and what appears to almost be a PTSD flashback. She recognizes D as the one who killed her in the past, or as she puts it, something inside her remembers. Taion is the ultimate wingman here. He supports Uni in her plan to corner D, and they succeed in destroying the Annihilator thanks to his illusions and Uni's acting. He doesn't interfere and gives Uni her moment to stick her foot in D's mouth in an absolute power move. She has a chance to take control and own her fear, and she doesn't waste it. She scares the shit out of D, and she earns it. That said, as with all trauma, it doesn't just go away after she gets her moment. It's still very much so a part of her she needs to learn how to cope with. But that's basically the last you will see of it in the main story. When they meet with D again in the future, she's in complete control and doesn't fall into fear. The resolution to her carrying the dog tag around is somewhat addressed in Side Story Uni, and there is a scene in the next chapter where someone talks to her about it, but this arc never comes to a proper point. She still carries around and stares at that dog tag even after there's no more mystery to it. Uni's story got completely shafted after this point, and it's a shame because this whole thing feels unresolved. Anyways, the gang make their escape through a water channel, but end up in the throne room. I assume Mobius laid out the wrong castle plans to lure them. When they realize this, they rush to get out, but Noah runs deeper into the room. It's where they were born. All of them from these cradles that take their data and rapidly grow them from an embryo into a 10-year-old. In one of the modules, they find Ethel, but as they're pondering how this is possible, a voice interrupts them. Melia has arrived. With her, we finally get the party's first interaction with In. Shockingly, Miu is the only one that somewhat recognizes him. They do the superhero thing where pointing a mask over their eyes somehow hides their identity, and I suppose they would find it hard to believe that there's two Noahs, but how does no one else pick up on how similar they are? It's not like he's hiding his long hair, eyes, or speaking a dramatically different voice. Heck, he has a dark version of Noah's special sword. Noah even nearly collapses from a migraine due to just being around him. They kind of act like it's supposed to be a surprise to the player when he takes off his mask, but it's not even a twist. It's obvious from the first cutscene he shows up in that he is another Noah. The question is, why is there another Noah? Although the big reveal in this chapter is finding out the Queen is actually a fake. This wasn't as much of a shock as it was a relief. It meant Melia and Nia hadn't been corrupted and pursuing endless war like we were led to believe, which would have been very against their characters. My reaction was basically, everything makes sense. Okay, moving on. A bunch of those flying vessels from the first chapter burst through the windows and attack, stealing the growth modules, and during the chaos, Ouroboros are able to escape. I'm gonna go off script for just a moment because, In's arm! I don't know, it's just going! It's just going! I don't know why, but that's just the funniest thing in the world to me. Okay, next chapter. Now the story is finally kicking up, I'm gonna have a lot more to say. We reached Sword March, at last, that wasn't too far from the castle. I was expecting it to be more of an endgame destination like Elysium, but it's more of a midpoint. Kinda, at least that's how it felt. At this point, I was not expecting it to only be 7 chapters. I assumed it was 10, just like in 2. Anyways, they meet the Lost Numbers, get eye patches to block Mobius' tracking, find out Shania's been stalking them this whole time, then get led to the city. I will admit, the area just being called City was somehow the funniest thing to me. Like, I was expecting an actual name, but they just go with City. But with Monica, the city elder, showing them around, the team gets a lot of exposition. They meet the city's Ouroboros candidates, these bitter kids that are pissed Noah's crew got their rightful powers. Learn the city is all descendants of previous Ouroboros, 2 of whom look like Noah and Mio, and learn about the life recycling system. They die and they're reborn again, no memory of their previous life, all made this way to fuel Mobius. But since the city is a place where people live outside the life recycling system, the characters learn about parenthood for the first time, and it's just the most wholesome scene I think I have ever seen.
Place one finger in her palm.
Hey, Sana! Look at this! You need to try it too!
Oh.
Whoa, you're right. Mimi, it's incredible.
Let me have a turn. What?
Tion's laughter out of pure joy is just so precious. These kids who have known only death finally getting to see new life as intended is the most adorable and heartwarming thing to come out of this game. Then...
Alright then, lads and lasses. Who wants to know how babies are made?
Y'all might regret that soon. People joke about this, but really, these kids are conditioned to know only fighting. Going back to the bathing scene at the beginning, men and women aren't separated at all. There's no reason for them to be. Sexuality is completely foreign to them, and that first scene was there to highlight it. But these guys don't get to rest and play with babies for long. Mio's got a little over a month left at this point, so they get their next mission right away. Break into the Agnes Castle prison camp and get information from Gondor, who knows where the true queens are. Time is of the essence, as when the eclipse happens next month, they hold a mass execution of prisoners. Noah also wants to rescue everyone there, but Monica is like, nah, they'll be fine. So then you get a boat and sail around the ocean. Can I just have a moment to express how fun this is? They give you a boat! Anyways, there's a moment where Shania and Senna get to talk alone, where Senna explains how Mio became her friend, or really her role model. Okay. I don't like this whole, oh wow, the popular girl is talking to me backstory they gave her. It's supposed to highlight Senna's lack of self-worth, but I find it's more reflective on who she used to be than who she currently is. The whole thing is, Senna tries to be like Mio, and how they chose to show this is her wanting to equip Mio's class and ordering the same food as her in a flashback. It just doesn't work. Senna never struggles with trying to be someone she's not. She's very different from Mio, and we never see her actively trying to be more like her. Maybe that's because of Mio's encouragement to just be herself, but then why does Senna still describe her as a role model instead of a friend? Has she gone through this arc already or not? The game is telling me no when her actions and character are telling me yes. While this isn't a frequent in the game, this is a prime example of tell don't show backfiring. They go on to say repeatedly that Senna struggles with self-confidence and is always gunning for approval. That would be a fine character trait, but it's not built up. It's talking about much more than it is shown. There's only 2 places I can think of where it actually somewhat presents itself. End of chapter 3 when she asks Mio if she really did a good job, and the beginning of chapter 5 when she wonders aloud if she did good in the castle. That's it. I don't count the talk with Shania, Mio, or Lance because that, again, is just someone saying she has this problem rather than actively showing as part of her character. It's so incredibly subtle, and rather than letting you learn who she is, the game just tells you because the writing is not confident in expressing it naturally. Other characters may suffer from this, but Senna is the true embodiment of it. But back to the story. They sneak into the prison camp with the Ouroboros candidates, pretend to be prisoners, and meet with Gondor, who ultimately gives them the key for the Cloud Keep. She tells the party to lay low for a few days until they have an escape opportunity. There's some tension between Gondor and Shania because of their bitter history the game was setting up earlier. Shania was obsessed with trying to be like Gondor, and it drove a big wedge between them due to Gondor being intense, is how I'll phrase it. Don't worry though, it ends with Shania saying to someone that everything is going to plan.
Can't say I feel so good about deceiving these kids.
Anyway, the day has come, it's time to escape prison, and...
Phew. So far, so good. Hey, that's
Sorgan of all places.
I found you. Faker.
Faker? I think you're the fake
Noah!
around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Huh. You're not even good enough to be
I'll
my
make you
fake.
eat those words.
That's basically what happens. Alright, to go more in depth, I have to try to restrain myself because I could actually gush about this part for hours. It's so good. So after busting down the gate, the party finds themselves surrounded. Then Shania steps out. She sold him out to Mobius. Even N and M show up to deal with them personally, this time taking off their masks, so finally the party recognizes them. But Shania gets her emotional speech about why she switched sides, and yeah, you can kind of see where she's coming from. It's an angle that absolutely has an appeal. Although you might be able to sympathize better if you were actually shown her backstory at this point, but I digress. Being cornered with no easy way out, Noah gives the key back to Gondor in an honestly painful moment. He really did just assign himself and his friends a suicide mission. This was the part that made me actually start to like Noah. Despite it being a suicide mission, it goes okay. Gondor and the Ouroboros candidates escape, minus Shania. Although the other prisoners are left behind, things appear to be looking hopeful until the Mobius step in. This time, M takes the battlefield. Her power is quite special, being able to take control of others' bodies, and it makes for one hell of a spectacle. She doesn't even need to fight the party, just make them fight each other. It is just so good. I can't describe how amazingly well done this whole set of scenes are. The choreography is slick, the voice acting is perfect, the camera angles and music, everything goes hard here. For once in this game, not a single word is wasted. It's genuinely chilling when she starts talking through Noah, Mio, and Tyon, and you hear M's voice in perfect sync with theirs, just taunting them. When they all start fighting each other in total confusion, no idea who is under M's control, I can't describe how intense and fluidly animated it is. This series has always had excellent cinematography, but this continuously moving camera takes the cake. Anyways, to get out of the situation, Tyon uses his Mondo to detect and mark the person currently being controlled, giving them a way to fight back. I know this is the story section, but can I just say coolest boss fight in the game? Like, she actually takes control of your allies. The Mondo circle them and you have to beat them up. She can even take control of your player character. This one-time mechanic is just so interesting and I love it. Such an awesome scene followed up by a sick boss fight. This is outstanding. But of course, Ian wouldn't let you actually defeat him, so he steps in. And the party gets their asses handed to them. With Noah and Mio battered and at his mercy, Lance and Senna push themselves past their limits in an effort to save them.
Lance. Sorry. Could I ask for some help here?
Yeah, no problem. Let's go.
Lance! Senna! Cancel the interlink! You're at your limit!
Oh, believer!
We knew that from the start!
Got you now. Scum!
Lance! What are you going to...
Senna! This'll buy you some extra time. Use it! Stop this! I don't want any of your time! Just come back, Senna!
We're too close. Take us out of here!
Okay!
Holy shit! Lance and Senna just tried to sacrifice themselves! This is not okay! I thought they were actually going to die years, and then was just content with it? Like, Buddy could have warped away and just didn't? Well, even if he's not, I'm grateful X stepped in. She seals their abilities with her staff, making it so they can't call their blades, can't interlink. They're defenseless now. So what does In do? He locks them up. I mean, I guess they can't die or else there would be more game to play, but also, you kidding me? Of course, movies are about the entertainment, life and death of their playthings, but really? He locks Mio away in a different cell and, just to rub salt in the wound, pays Noah a little visit to tell him about his plans for the sideshow. It's Mio's homecoming. Unlike everyone else in the cycle who dies and gets reborn, those who make it to their homecoming don't get reborn again. They're taken out of circulation. This whole thing is heartbreaking. Noah, who's normally more reserved and collected, absolutely breaks. Punching the walls and bars constantly, refusing to eat, he falls to complete pieces and only deteriorates more as the month passes. Mio barely talks, but when she does, it really hurts.
Hey. When the two of us first met, you asked me if I wanted to survive.
Yeah?
I replied, I didn't mind either way.
Yeah.
I'll correct that. Now I want to live. To live and learn.
She's only now grown attached to her life as it's about to end. She found a reason to live for herself, and that was because of Noah. She never called him by his name. The fear of getting attached was something she couldn't bear. I didn't notice it until this moment, but this coupled with the only time a step away plays, it punches you in the gut. But the eclipse is now, and Mio's time is up. They're gonna stop this, right? The city is gonna bust in and save everyone, right? Noah's gonna be able to pull Lucky 7 and stop the homecoming somehow, right? Gondor will have saved the queen, and that's gonna be the real Nia up there, and she's gonna use her healing powers to stop Mio from vanishing, right? Right?
It's been fun, Noah.
You cannot end a chapter like that! This is why you're gonna be here for 5 hours. The section is long, but they hit it out of the park. The dialogue feels natural and furthers both the plot and characters. The sentences don't feel pad out, and it's emotionally weighed in both the speech and animation. We see a good amount of action in these scenes with excellent composition and voice acting that's somehow even better. It pushes these characters to their limits to see how they react, and it resonates. This is my favorite stretch of the story, and it's not even over yet. So, how do they get out of this? Noah wakes up in some mental space and is taken through In's memories by a hooded figure. You see In struggles through all his incarnations, only to lose with him dying before his eyes again and again. You get taken from the start, where In and Im have a child and reach their homecoming, to the end, where In became Mobius and slaughtered the people of the city to bring Im with him. It also confirms In and Im are Noah and Mio, just when they became Mobius, the hope they left behind turned into those two. After learning about In, we get an important moment with Noah. It's the reason he became an Offseer. On my first time seeing it, I really thought it was a load of cheese that sounded straight out of Sonic, but the more I think about it, the more I think this might be my favorite moment of Noah's. Up until this point, Noah has felt very closed off. When Mio asks him what's on his mind, he brushes it aside to process it alone, never letting anyone know what's going on in his head. But now, he's lost everything. Those walls are breaking down. After all the death he's seen, this is the moment we finally learn what drove and continues to drive him as an Offseer. It wasn't the grief of Yoren's death, it was the questions it left. This is the mindset that led him to start examining the purpose of the war in the first place. His anger anger towards a system that never gave people a chance to be happy, his want to tear the world apart for perpetuating the cycle of violence, rationing that if there's no way to stop it, then the world should just stop existing. All of this comes out so natural and feels so human. This is the strength of Noah's character I have been longing to see. He's been doing all of this for Mio, but now that she's gone, he's faced the reality that her legacy is now in his hands. He has to change it. Try the path in didn't, even if it means being alone. But he won't be.
I'm sorry.
Im used her power to trade places with Mio back when they fought. This had excellent foreshadowing that many people, including myself, didn't predict. If you go back to the fight and pay attention, you'll notice Im avoids Noah's question and her shedding a tear starts to make sense. Her boss music has her flute in it when Mio is the off-seer, not Im. Mio isn't quite herself either, her eyes looking down, distraught. She hardly talks when she's not being controlled. In the cell, she's peacefully away in the end, barely speaking up to comfort the others in Mio's place, even using the phrase, "my Noah." It's so subtle and yet so obvious. Everything feels like it could be explained away until the twist comes and it all makes sense. This is how you do foreshadowing. But In does not take this well. He loses his mind, starts screaming like a possessive boyfriend upon realizing his Im is the one who died. It's actually kind of pitiful. Yeah, it's gross talking about Mia like property, but the sheer pain of the loss is really reflected in both the animation and voice acting. Have I mentioned how good those are yet? Because I really don't think I've praised it enough. But being unable to talk In down, they have to fight. Noah and Mio interlink and X can't stop it. Zed's power isn't working on them anymore. They free their friends, destroy X's staff, and as a team, fight In. While an entire audience of Agnian soldiers just watch. That's such a stupid detail. Why does no one help the console? Even with Im gone, In isn't ready to move on and still wants to preserve his eternity. But Noah's response is basically,
What good is a world that goes on forever?
then he pulls a sword out of his chest. He's made the choice to fight against the flow, allowing him to unlock Lucky Seven's true power and pull free the Sword of Origin. This scene is already incredible, but Noah's raw emotions sell the part alone. He is determined in not holding a thing back anymore. He knows what he wants and he is going to do it. This is the driving fire in Noah I have been waiting for, and he's not even the best part of this scene. That's Mio expressing the feelings Im left with her, trying desperately to get through to In, knowing deep down he's Noah. But even her words can't reach him. He's become so corrupted by Mobius, so selfish, he can't even think about anything but his own grief. Not to take away from this genuinely great moment in writing, but I wish he was built up more before this point. He's at Kevin's castle and doesn't do much, then we get his entire backstory dumped on us in this part. He doesn't get any build-up in the villain scenes. The very few we do get focusing solely on Mobius are such nothing scenes, they might as well not exist. In my opinion, it would have been better to add some background to him throughout the story rather than point it all out at once. Moving on though, with damage to his core, In is out of the fight, leading to our party liberating the castle. X reveals they have another Annihilator, and their target this time is the city. Shania sold them out as well. Similar to earlier with In, her speech hits, you can feel the weight, but it's missing the context to make you sympathize with her because, you know, she just tried to commit genocide and is pleased about it. There's not even a pang of regret on her face upon seeing the hole left behind. Of course, the city isn't actually destroyed. After all, there's still quests left there. Instead, it's a giant Furnace, and thanks to Mio warning them earlier, they were able to move it in time. But when Gondor confronts Shania about everything, she takes a turn and commits suicide. She had already planned to die on that day, to go into the cycle and start her life anew. It was what she wanted, but I don't think it was how she wanted. Now, while this is a good scene, I just found it hard to care. Literally, when Shania and Gondor became relevant in the story, I hope they both die. Your current and only context from the main story is they used to be friends and Gondor was a huge bitch to her. Couple that lack of background with the fact she gleefully almost succeeded in mass murder, and you are not going to convince me to feel bad for her. I clapped when Shania shot herself, which I don't think is the reaction they were going for. Shania is a character that desperately needed more background that wasn't relegated to an optional side story, especially if they're planning to throw something like this at us. We needed more quality time with her earlier. The single talk with Senna was not enough. Senna's attachment rang hollow because they barely interacted, only really knowing each other for a few days before Shania stabbed them all in the back and mocked her best friend's upcoming death. I don't think Shania herself is a bad character. You can understand why her wants would be appealing to someone, but they ruined the impact by not giving us a reason to care before her death. I love this part of the game. I think the writing and characters here are fantastic, but it's missing context and is so much better when you do have it. It's like they wrote an amazing end to the second act without thinking about how the first was important for understanding it. But that is the peak of the story. Now it's all downhill from here. After all everyone just went through, all those great moments where it doesn't feel like a second is wasted, the writing falls back to the generic dialogue. Even in the very next scene, Noah monologues about how he felt hopeless and wished for the same thing as N, making him just as bad. It's so lazily laid out. I really thought this was going to be a turning point, both with the writing and characters. We'd see Noah being more emotive, Mio having a stronger presence and drive, now someone has died for her, but any changes are subtle. I was really disappointed because I liked how everyone was written here. We don't get other passionate Noah moments anywhere near as good as this, and Mio soon goes back to just following her de facto partner. That is, after side story Mio. Yeah, this is just thrown in there, most likely because they realized the chapter would feel short without it. So everyone is going to the Cloud Keep to meet the Queen, but Mio learned from Im's memories that Miyabi is alive, and she's along the way, so why not? This is where we actually get Mio's backstory. Up until now, we were just told about Miyabi's death and saw how it affected Mio, but now we get their background. So, Mio didn't want to be an Offseer, but she was assigned the position anyways, and Miyabi showed her the value in it. After they were transferred to Omega, a testing colony run by Y, the place went up after one of his experiments failed. Miyabi got both Senna and Mio out of there and presumably died. The party gets there, and yes, Miyabi is indeed alive, but she's not the only one. Y rapidly aged them back to their 10th terms, where their life doth glow and glimmer brightest. Oh yeah, he also stripped away their memories, which Rebirth does that anyways. The thing is, they're so mentally unsound due to the rush conditioning, they need Miyabi's song to help stabilize them. So how do they rescue Miyabi? No, it's not by using Mio's Mobius powers, although if you were looking forward to possibly playing with them, you can't. Zed took them away from her pretty quickly, so she doesn't have special abilities anymore. Instead, how they answer this problem...
Mio! It's feelings!
Feelings?
It's the Offseer melody we've been playing. We just need to play it again now.
Understood. I'm taking the lead. You follow.
So you're telling me they could counter mind control with the power of music all this time? Anyways, bing bang boom, you beat up Y and Miyabi joins you as a hero. I still think we need the context around Mio's backstory sooner rather than sloppily dumping it here, but you do get some relevant information out of this quest, such as learning about the conditioning everyone undergoes before being born and Mobius themselves being Zed's avatars. Alright, now that's over with. End of chapter 6. It's time. I hated it. I legit think this is the worst part in the entire story from both a conceptual and writing standpoint. Is the reason I started working on this. The order they chose to do these events pissed me off in such a way it really soured my taste for the game and its cast. So you finally find the Agnes Queen, and then...
She's been killed!
D&J killed her. You know, a fan favorite character. Someone I have been dying to see more of throughout this entire game, and the party's only hope to restoring the world. Dead. Do you know how they follow this up?
Yoren, I'm grateful as Spark to you.
Yoren, you're more than this.
Come to us, please, Yoren!
Yeah. The characters give Yoren a pep talk, tell him he's better than all this, and they all love him. While he just killed their last chance at setting the world to rights. If they wanted to have a heartfelt moment with Yoren, they needed to happen at a different point because A, he just killed Nia, I really want to slice him in half now, and B, where is the party's rage? He betrayed them, just took away their only hope of survival, not to mention has been actively trying to murder them and enjoying it. Their reaction of clinging on to their long-dead friend feels inhuman, especially when the stakes are this high. Like, what happened to that heart and determination just a bit ago? They picked a very wrong and bad time to try and make the player care about Yoren. The Xenoblade series has a habit of only trying to make you care about a character as they're about to die or have died, but here they actively make the character do something abhorrent, and then it's, oh, Noah's so kind, he just wants to help people and protect life, but they just committed genocide. Surely there's a limit to his kindness. Yoren even gets a noble sacrificial death, taking Dee down with him to protect his friends whom he suddenly decided to like. You know, the friend he's been taunting, staying there below him, actively rubbing salt in their wounds for the past several months. Those friends! I hate everyone's reactions. I hate Yoren. They tried to pull a Kevin with him. I'm glad he's dead. Nia's alive, though. Now, it's because she's a blade and thus can regenerate as long as her core is intact. But do they explain this for anyone who hasn't played 2 since this game is meant to stand on its own? Absolutely not. Although, where is Dromark? Nia's alive. He should be alive. I seriously was expecting him to show up as some sort of boss, like Nia's guardian while she slept, but nope! See, if Dromark was there, you never would have gotten stabbed, Nia. Now where is he? This fucking chapter ending. Nia's awakening being a Cosmos reference can't even improve my opinion of it. The writing is just bad, and it pissed me off so much I actually have to go back and remind myself there are good scenes and character moments. Although now, fuck Noah! You wouldn't stab those consoles after Ethel died, but Yoren killing the queen is easily forgivable? Be consistent, you melodramatic cat simp! I've been so busy ranting about Yoren, I didn't even mention Dee. He gets a backstory dump and dies here too. Despite being important to Uni's history, he's such a nothing villain. His whole thing is he loved murder and collects the heads of those he's killed. Ooh, edgy man, you want me to take this seriously? Right now, along with everything else going on. They tried to do too much at once here. Between Nia showing up, Yoren's redemption, Dia's backstory, and 3 deaths, one of which being a fake out, it's just far too crowded. A better place to put this whole mess would have been at the altar reception as soon as they reveal the Cloud Keep. Maybe have D&J thank them for leading him to the true queen and the party has to fight to protect her. It would have given Yoren his moment without Nia overshadowing him and having the police scene make an actual impact. Want a boss fight before awakening Nia? Have Dromark test their worthiness or some shit. Just anything other than that shock value fake out. Also, Tyon, buddy, I love you, but she was stabbed on the right. Your heart is on the left. This chapter even made Tyon stupid, God help us. Okay, Nia's alive, so exposition dump. To try and sum this up here, basically the 2 worlds used to be one, but they got split into 2 due to Klaus's experiment. One made up of matter, the other antimatter, at least from my understanding. This is why annihilation events happen and why staying in an interlink too long will cause one. The 2 types of matter simply cannot interact. However, the worlds were magnetized to each other. Nia and Melia gained the ability to communicate via light. That part isn't really explained, but to save their worlds from collision, together they built an ark to contain all of their data and reboot it. It's kinda like the Lifehold, but more advanced. As the worlds were about to collide, Zed froze time, creating Ionios using the data stored in Origin and harvesting life energy to sustain the existence of Mobius, hence why Ionios means eternity. He also captured Melia as she's basically a key to Origin and he needed it. So now everyone needs to get to Origin and rescue Melia, although for that they need a special boat as it's in the ocean vortex which rips apart anything that gets close. The party goes back to the city to see if Samon can build it and just leaves Nia there alone. You know, someone who Mobius just tried to assassinate is very much so not hidden anymore. Great job, guys. Of course, they go right back because they need origin metal to build the boat, and now Nia asks if they have an actual plan. They do not. She tells them how to get into Origin, and they leave to collect more metal. Just so happens the last piece is at Kevis Castle, prompting side story Noah. They get there to find it empty. Any life readings are hauled up inside buildings. It's quiet until a flute starts playing, a tune Noah knows well. It's Chris. Chris is back. As Mobius. I'm just gonna say it, I am so sick of characters coming back again and again. Death has no meaning here and loses all impact. I understand, that's the way this world runs. You die and you're reborn. But every character that had an impact on the main cast comes back, and it gets tedious. First is Yorn, then flows into Ethel, Mio, Garvel and his gang, Nimue, Shania, Chris, Miyabi, Kamaravi, Mwamda, Hacked, Im. If they do this a few times, fine, but it is so overused. Every character that's in a flashback comes back. Heck, 3 became Moby so they don't lose their memories, and Miyabi's memories are stored through the power of music. That's not to say I think these characters coming back are bad in of itself. Quite a few make sense, and I do like. Just the tactic got very overused and wore me thin. Chris didn't need to come back. He taught Noah the values of being an Offseer, committed suicide in front of him, and left him emotionally scarred. He did enough, and him showing up for Noah's side story was just not necessary. While I'm at it, this quest wasn't necessary. It serves to give more context to Noah's journey as an Offseer, but it was already established multiple times before this. Its other purpose was to give a background to Chris, to show he knew about rebirth, the ways of the world, hence him choose its own end and being good here. Without this quest, you really don't know a lot about Chris, but I'd argue Chris is a character that didn't need much background. A simple flashback after Noah realized about the world, now understanding Chris's words, would have been enough. He only became Mobius because he wanted to hear Noah's song again, yet he still fights you, then dumps some later reiterated information about Mobius before dying. I do like the loaded questions he asked, but I don't feel it was necessary that he be the one asking them. Once again, I think this whole story would have been better had it been spread throughout the game. As is, it kind of feels like an excuse to liberate the castle and not much else. I don't think it's poorly written or anything, just something that didn't need to exist in the first place. Although, that's the boat quest done. Now time to enter Origin and go for the big bad! Yeah, the pacing here is pretty rushed, and I don't think it's entirely on the writing this time. The simple fact is the player has run out of new regions to explore. In order to set a destination you couldn't just skip travel to, they'd have to make a new map. Capricorn Peak is small compared to every other area you go through. It's really the only part of the Upper Edia region. Makes you think the ending of the game was a bit of a rush job overall. Looks like their world size ambitions might have backfired a bit. It is odd to me how Noah just decides to drive the Bravery, and Riku, their normal pilot who knows he has no experience, has to tell him what to do. Like, I can get the other Xenoblade Pro tags driving. Shulk was the tech guy and maintained those systems. Obviously, he knew how to operate them, and Rex, being a salvager, worked with equipment all the time. Noah plays the flute. You're not going to convince me he knew a thing about driving Alevnis. How they all survived and actually got an Origin when their pilot was definitely an unlicensed rookie remains a mystery. Oh, and here's Melia. That was fast. Of course, it's not as easy as freeing her. In comes back to stand in your way. He's, not doing well without Im. Since Agnes Castle, he has literally done nothing but sit and sulk, wallowing in his grief. In his attempt to cope, he's redirected the blame at Noah. After fighting him, it's Mio who shows him kindness and ultimately is the one to finally start getting through to him. In his sorrow of wondering why he kept failing while Noah was able to prevail, Noah chimes in to say,
"But I had a little help from my friend. Something you wouldn't understand since you don't have any friends."
Look, I was just a living lore moment, but nothing else. I mean, come on, the villains are called Mobius, and I could literally feel the resistant power of friendship line here. But pushing Noah aside, where he belongs, let's be real, this is about Mio. This is her moment, and one In needed, to explain where he went wrong, why Im left him alone, that she never stopped loving him. In is probably the most compelling villain in this game, but until this scene, I didn't care much about him at all. He came off as a possessive boyfriend, talking about Mio like he was entitled to her. It was hard to harbor sympathy towards someone trapping their partner in a toxic relationship, even after seeing the memories he was saddled with. His redemption also came a little sudden for me. Just the previous cutscene, no one was able to get through to him. He went on about how he was entitled to the lives of his descendants. He had every right to slaughter them without even batting an eye. Then he willingly joins with Noah to finally fulfill his original goal. It was like they laid out how he was irredeemable, then did just that. There could have been a better sense he was coming around and just wasn't fully convinced yet, but instead he fights the redemption, and that contributes to it feeling too quick. He also wasn't given the proper build-up for this moment. Noah saying he's become regret itself is a powerful line, but we don't really see enough of In or his true feelings to fully sympathize with him. What In really needed was a solid scene with Im earlier in the story, something to give us a hint he had regret as a Mobius to foreshadow this moment. I really don't think him briefly breaking eye contact in Chapter 6 was enough. Although now, Noah is half Mobius, and Melia is freed. With her release, she explains that Zed, and Mobius itself really, are a construct. Zed is not a person, but coagulated fear given human form. This information feels like it came a little late. Like, Zed is the next target, and we're just now starting to learn about him. Throughout the game, he just sat in his theater, alone, like a loser. Not really doing anything, but occasionally sharing a few words with his avatars. Why did this take so long? Anyway, she teleports back to her castle and wait, when could she do that? Well, moving on. With both nations firing on Origin and the city helping with the unified assault, Monika and Gondor show up to join you. A little further, you'll get a confrontation with X, but only if you've done side story Uni. If not, the boss room will just be empty. Going past there, you'll also get into a fight with Y, and that's it. They are the only other true Mobius besides Zed, and they don't even get death cutscenes. They only have a moderate amount of time in those side stories, and it's not much, honestly. I wanted to like them more, but they never gave me a reason. One last obstacle though, and that's Zed. Confronting him, he talks about his ideals, saying they are the desires of everyone. His existence is the proof. However, him turning humans into Mobius, making In choose between two very important things in his life, all that was because it amuses him. That line ruined Zed for a lot of people because up until that point, you could somewhat understand where he was coming from. His reasons help push the message that fear will control your life if you let it, and put Zed in as a morally gray antagonist, someone reacting to fear rather than facing it. It's all an act of protection, not only for him, but for everyone who's afraid inside of Origin. He's doing this for them. Then they take that sympathy of his and turn around to say he toys with their lives for kicks. It's not really a shock. After all, Mobius all this time have been about the drama. Heck, Zed watches everyone's lives in a theater. It was built up, and I think it's there to show how evil he actually is. As if creating a world that requires people constantly killing each other to sustain its existence isn't already evil. But of course, the party is having none of this. Get ready for a long boss fight. It's actually a pretty cool battle. As you get through the early phases with him, he stops and recharges his energy using the fearful voices. After that part, Noah smashes the stage and makes this whole illusion fall apart, revealing Zed's and Origin's true form. Zed reshapes Origin with the power from the core, forming a giant Ferronis. With the queens breaking the ties to the flame clocks, they join the fight by also transforming their castles into Ferronises. They made Alchemoth into Alchemech. This was actually somewhat subtly foreshadowed. After all, everything that has a flame clock is a Ferronis. Doesn't make it any less wild, though. But with our party, even though Melia explained what Zed and Mobius were earlier, them realizing what she meant here is done very well. It's not just the big bad they're fighting, it's their own fears. They're inside of Origin too. They have to push past them, show their will to persist in order to move forward. Further into the fight, randomly selected heroes you've met throughout the game will join in and fight alongside you. That alone is cool enough, but then both Nia and Melia hop in? Yes, all is for the future connected is a real line said by Melia and not some joke. How is this game real? But with the last phase down, Zed loses his calm demeanor and engulfs the entire party in this void. If someone showed me this shot instead it was from an actual cutscene, I wouldn't have believed them. The background looks like animators saving budget on a kid's show. Although Noah and Mio's irises react, and In and M never disappeared. They were with them this whole time. They are the same people after all. However, they still embody the desire for the endless now, and believing in the future alone is not enough to change it. So to truly free the world, In and M sacrifice themselves to rid the desire that caused it, thus freeing Origin. With Mobius officially defeated, the life marks vanish, and after some hesitation, contemplating if he really has the right to make this choice for everyone, Noah decides to allow time to move again. The longer I look at it, the more I actually like this part. Weird transforming mechs aside, the writing and emotions are actually really good. I believe the reason for my lackluster first impression has to do with, and say it with me, a lack of build-up. In just got redeemed. You just learned what Zed is, that Mobius was a collective entity and not individuals. There was hardly any time for it to sink in or make me care. The writing itself here is great, but the rushed nature of the overall ending hurt my first playthrough. Although, that's only part of it. Now to talk about the rest. It's set up like I'm supposed to expect this, but so, the worlds that came together that were originally one before Klaus's experiment get separated again when Origin seemingly reboots. Although, wasn't the whole point of Origin's creation that the worlds were going to combine anyways, that no one could stop them coming together in the first place, hence the project and each side building half? Both worlds are stored in Origin, so why did they suddenly go their separate ways after Zed was defeated and time resumed? Shouldn't they have completely collided and everyone stored in Origin get reborn together? Some have interpreted it as meaning the worlds will get rebooted on their own, but it's never made very clear. The game even steers you in the opposite direction, the whole theme being about the worlds coming together. It never gives you a reason to believe that the reboot wasn't a combined one. Even so, there'd be nothing stopping the two from colliding again, as Nia even tells us they're magnetized to each other. So why wouldn't the queens do a proper merger instead of a temporary fix? Was Origin just to buy them time to figure out a more permanent solution? Was our end goal a band-aid? It really makes no sense with the information the game gives us, and that's why I found the ending unfulfilling. I mean, the goodbye scenes are very sweet, but I was completely lost the first time seeing it. I went back and combed through so much just trying to find a hint of foreshadowing, and the most I found was a single line that used the plural states. It's no wonder this ending confused everyone. Although, I guess it doesn't matter too much since basically none of it happened. With time resumed and the worlds rebooted, Ionia ceases to exist and everyone just goes on with their lives as usual, their memories of that frozen time getting wiped. Mio's memories of Noah fade, Uni doesn't have Tyen's recipe book, and Xeon was never given a spongy spud by Juniper! Permadead characters like Yorin still came back after the reboot, so you didn't really save anyone! Nothing you did in the game or story mattered in the end. Yes, everything that existed was reality, as Melia said, but that doesn't change how restoring the world reset everything. They really pulled a Sonic 06 with this, huh? The post-credit scene does leave it up to interpretation though, with Noah happily walking towards the combined melody of his and Mio's Off-Seer tune before completely vanishing. It's implied he has at least some residual memory left, or maybe the Off-Seer melody resonated with him. It's up for debate and even more similar to Sonic 06. That said, it's still a confusing ending that leaves you with many unanswered questions, like what happened to the city people? Origin did record their lives, giving them a chance to be reborn again in the future, but they were mixed nation children. The beginning of their bloodlines can't meet. Is it more like their souls will be born again, but their genes will be different? Will some simply not be reborn? Which world will they be born in? The side that has their iris? Like, yes, assigned Agnes at birth. Nabon don't even have irises, so what about them? Speaking of origin, what did happen with it? Do both sides have their halves, each a complete version? Is it just gone? They also never fill in some things such as what is black fog? What causes someone to become a Mobius? Why do Mobius appear to age? How do some people keep a few memories? What exactly does Offscene do? Why do motes rise from objects, and why are Nopon here if they aren't part of the cycle?
Maybe Mobius needed something to eat early on.
You are too proud of that joke. But no, like, were they stored with the same data as the monsters? If that's the case, I'll need to have a talk with Nia and Melia. This game just feels like it half explains certain elements before moving on and leaves things with either confusing descriptions or barely one at all. It's strange because the series has always been so good with world building, yet here they gave us this huge fictional world filled with questions they just didn't answer. With the previous games, I'd always say it was a character-driven story about the world, but here, it's just a character-driven story. It felt very un-Xeno-like having the world and its workings kind of shoved aside. I don't like people saying the DLC will fix it, because I shouldn't need to buy additional content to get closure on major themes and plot points. Torna was great and definitely enhanced too, but even without it, the story stood on its own. Good DLC should enhance the main game, not finish it. Yes, I do believe this game is narratively unfinished. Everything I've mentioned up to this point contributes to a poorly paced story that feels both too long and too short with a frankly unsatisfying and confusing ending. Wait, Poppy? Never mind, this ending is great! I want Poppy as a hero. We need more tank classes, she is already modeled for this game, this is non-negotiable. Oh yeah, the image everyone was talking about. I got this spoiled. Multiple times. I'd just be looking at a clip Nintendo put on Twitter, and people just stuck this image all over the replies. I wasn't sure if it was real or not. It is real, and I refuse to believe someone that was so short at 15 grew to be that tall. I do have to ask though, I was under the assumption that even though blades were made from the same stuff as any other being, they weren't able to reproduce with humans. Like, they're two different species and their cores are born from titans. They become titans, which birth more cores. They reproduce asexually, from my understanding. While there were stories of drivers and blades getting married, as well as blade trafficking essentially, there wasn't a record in 2 of anyone actually having children with a blade. I mean, there was Cole and Iona, but I thought she was a war orphan he took in and not his biological granddaughter. This is just a bit weird. I suppose it was meant to be our confirmation that Mio is indeed Nia's daughter, which makes sense when you consider 2's New Game Plus title screens. Okay, there. I talked about the image. No, I'm not really bothered by it. You'll have to do much more than that to faze me. There's a lot going on in this story. It might be the most philosophical in the series, both the most vague and most obvious of all the Xenoblade games. I don't doubt that there's a lot of Japanese themes that go over my American head. I can see why people like it, although it left me with quite a few complaints. One of the biggest is just the writing itself. Even cool moments and concepts feel bogged down by sloppy dialogue that's more like filler. Throughout this story, there were so many places where I kept thinking a line could be removed or shortened without losing an impact. On one hand, it's admirable they wanted each main character to have a comparable amount of dialogue, but on the other, it feels like their solution to that was adding unnecessary words which make the cutscenes feel padded. I dare say you could take about 3 to 5 hours off the overall runtime if you just trimmed the fat. And that sucks because, as I've been saying, there's a lot in this game that needed more screen time. Instead, the writing wastes so much of it, it doesn't have any left to actually give those characters and situations the attention they require. Additionally, there's a liberal use of flashbacks. Oftentimes, they're for things that were either recently shown or didn't need reiterating. It can be helpful to let us know what the characters are thinking as well as refreshing the point, but many were just slow and not needed. Although even with that issue breaking a lot of the tension, this story can be fatiguing. It's a serious plot that deals with a lot of heavy topics without much levity to break it up. Normally once you hit a player with an intense part, there's a lull to calm down and process in, but they don't always do that here. There's more than a few moments where they'll have multiple emotionally charged scenes and revelations in a row, and it was asking me to care about too many things at once. I actually need to set the game down at a few points, and it took days until I felt like picking it back up, which is something I never experienced with the previous titles. If you're going to have a story as dark and serious as this one, you need to be sure to provide the player with an ample amount of breathers to prevent emotional exhaustion. Of course, the pacing issues do nothing to help that problem. I feel part of the blame for the poor pacing, especially later in the game, lies with the chapter system. The amount of story progression in the first half of the chapters feels equal to the amount 2 had, although this game is 3 chapters shorter and they don't budget for that. The cutscenes have a similar runtime, but after pacing themselves in the first half, they scrambled to fit the remaining story beats in the second. I don't know if this rushed nature is entirely due to them wanting 7 chapters for symbolism, but I do believe it contributes to that problem. I also never got my hook for the story. While there certainly were great moments, there was nothing like Fiora's death, Vandam's death, or even the Mimuzome reveal that made me determined to see it through. I only kept going because it was a Xeno game and I trusted it would turn itself around. Although after it started to ramp up, it quickly fell back apart. As is, the story left me feeling drained and disinterested in the game as a whole. It wasn't until I started going back and exploring, doing the last few quests, that I started to feel positive about it again. Of course, there's more that contributed to my initial negative feelings. Narratively wise, they drop the ball with multiple subjects. One that immediately comes to mind is the Annihilation effect. I honestly forgot their world was dying due to these random events, partly because the only time you ever encounter them is when they're induced artificially, either from the Annihilator or staying in an interlink too long. I actually started to think that these events were all staged by Mobius with the explanation about the fog being a cover-up. I really feel a natural annihilation event should have happened near the party early on to establish why these characters are so uneasy about the black fog. Just being told why lacks an impact. It makes it hard to grasp when they go into a cave filled with fog that they could actually get blown up. You don't get the same sense of danger as you would after witnessing it firsthand. Also, the terrain. There's parts floating in the air, held there by the frozen time, but landslides and cave-ins still happen. How are only some parts of the Earth held in place, but others aren't? Gravity works here, but is it selective when it comes to annihilation events? They also have the tendency to lay out threads as if they're foreshadowing and just leave them hanging. Now I know, every story has plot holes. 1 and 2 are certainly no strangers to it, but they bring special attention to certain details and then ignore them. Some, such as Mio saying something to one of Noah's memories, implied to be the raid that killed Yorin, could be their fault. I assume this would come back, maybe stir up some relations or expand on the Agni backstories, like maybe Mio was part of that raid, but it's never brought up again. Maybe they meant R as in our nation and not individually, so this could just be me misunderstanding. English isn't very clear with this stuff. Then there's the headaches Noah and Mio get when In and Im are close. Obviously they're bad, Noah can hardly speak when it happens. You can guess it has to do with them both being the same person coming into close proximity or from In's powers, but then why does it just stop happening? He's clearly using his powers, he's next to Noah, so why nothing? You can't tell me In wouldn't purposefully do something to hurt Noah. If it's just supposed to be foreshadowing that In is another Noah, then it really wasn't necessary. His looks and sword gave it away. But In and Im's child, they never gave him a name. Even at the end of the game, In and Im explained how happy they were to leave a life in this world. I was expecting a name drop. It would have been so easy to put here, but nothing. And how about the incomplete Ouroboros comments? 3 different people, one of them being Nia, basically tells them that their forms aren't the true form. Now, the Mobius I can take is taunting, but Nia? I was thinking maybe they become true Ouroboros, like Shulk finding his true Monado or Pyra and Mithra awakening in Numa, but no! I suppose maybe Noah and Mio had, since they were able to escape from Zed's control, although they were already established to exist outside the flows, so what about everyone else? Black fog is also something mentioned a lot, but not given any real explanation. The closest thing I could think of is it has something to do with the Fog King from Future Connected, but it went unexplained there as well. When In's core got damaged, the black fog was leaching out, as happens with all consoles before they die, so does it have to do with Mobius? Why does it gather in place before Annihilation events? Why is it used to fuel the Annihilators? I don't know! There's fog, it's black, it causes interference, and sometimes it's huge bombs, although not really. No explanation as to how, what, or why, it's just there! And this is more of a nitpick, but how come no one asked about the life marks? I took Guernica telling them to go to the city if they wanted to survive, meaning that's where the marks could be removed. Yet your reward for reaching the big destination is a bunch of exposition for everything except the reason you went there. 2 of the founder statues even say they somehow lived full lives, although no one questions it. Mio is a month from death at that point. Even later on when they meet with Nia, the queen, co-creator of Origin, and most powerful healing blade in existence, no one said anything. With Monica stating the Cradle Kids had such short lifespans, I assume the marks were tied to their bodies, but then they vanish at the end of the game. Are the marks linked to Mobius? If so, why didn't Noah becoming half Mobius remove his? Would it have even mattered? Mio's body was breaking down as her time was running out, so if these bodies are designed to only live 10 years before failing, then would there have been a point? What about the founders? How do these people even work? Also, if I can just go off for a moment, what are the irises? How do they work? Are they implanted like microchips, a contact? Why do the natural humans have them? Are they born with them? Does this mean babies can surf the web? Are they connected to a network inside of Origin, or are updates sent out on an individual basis? What happens if an update bricks an iris? Could Mobius just do that to someone if they wanted? And how does weapon summoning work? Like in 2, it was generated from a blade's core, converting energy into matter. I know it's not possible, but this is fiction. These guys can't manifest ether in a core, so how are they summoning matter? And how the heck did Noah add Lucky 7 to his blade? It's a foreign object, so if he died, would it just materialize next to his husk? Would he just have it when he's reborn? Are weapons stored in some kind of pocket dimension? Can Origin do that? Is that how the Collectopedia cards work? Is that where they keep their camping gear? If I keep thinking about this, I'm going to give myself a headache. I guess it just works. So, healing. Surely there's a limit to what healing can do, otherwise doctors wouldn't be needed, but it's never established. It just treated like a casual thing Taion and Uni do, and I find myself questioning why they never tried to save Guernica. Uni heals up Bolioris' supposed sprain, but not Lanza's pulled muscle? Or when he got cut in training as a child? Why didn't she help when Ashira was stabbed in her quest, when Nia was stabbed? If it wasn't possible with regular healing, then what about her Ouroboros healing? That's how it worked with Nia in 2. They set up as a fix for injuries, but then they never tell us what injuries are out of the question. How does healing work in this universe? To go to something bigger, Offseers aren't really explained either, or at least very well. I feel I have somewhat of a grasp as to what it is, but also not. Offseeing appears to be noble, putting the dead at peace by saying on their voices and memories, which come out in motes from the body. But Noah comments on how Jay's mud monsters had motes rise from them even though they weren't really alive. So, what does this mean? Their minds were real, but we also know at least some weren't dead, as Isard was just unconscious, as was the rest of the colony, whom I assume made up the other puppets. Was he saying on people who were still alive? What about the motes that rise from the belongings of the past city people? Those have no life in them, not even a mind, they're objects. And also, considering this entire game of war is controlled by Mobius, what purpose do Offseers serve for them? They're clearly important enough to warrant assigned escorts. Again, I was waiting for a twist about saying off their memories, erasing them for when they're reborn, or giving Mobius extra power, but nothing came of it. Even in the first few cutscenes, we see the cradles activate before Noah sends them off, so it's not a requirement for being reborn. Is this sending off their memories to be stored in Origin? Is it purely for morale? I can somewhat understand them not wanting to sully Offscene, but in this very controlled game of endless war, why is there an entire class that serves no purpose other than respect for the dead, of which Mobius has none for? It doesn't make sense. It's set up like there was going to be an arc about this that was just cut. Also, Noah's sword. They have a cutscene to explain why it's so unique, really just being a sheath for Lucky 7. However, they bring special attention to Noah saying he changed the name to something he missed and not really wanting to disclose it. Chekhov's gun. When the game popped up a tutorial on using Lucky 7, I was like, oh god, they're gonna punch me in the gut with the real name. And then, final boss. He chucks it in the sea. Never said. At all. To iterate, there was an entire conversation in a cutscene about this. Not a single throwaway line. If he kept the original name, it wouldn't have attention brought to it. Honestly, I'd even accept if he named it Crispy Cheese. Just give me something. Why set this out if you're never going to follow it up? At least in the story. So, technically, you can find the name of Noah's sword in-game, but there's some steps and absolutely no character comment. Once you complete a quest and gain access to upgrading weapons, you can upgrade Noah's, then go into the hero roster, and on his profile, his weapon name changes to Truth Singer. I still don't get how this is something he missed, but I sure missed it! That was an absolutely awful way to follow this up, if it even is the canonical name he gave it, because that's his blade name and not Lucky 7! You have no idea how mad I am about this! It's not even the only important lore detail that's hidden away in a quest. There's way more. I keep seeing people wonder how Riku got Lucky 7, and that is kinda explained in Uniting the 7 Nopon. Remember when Riku said it was forged by 7 legendary Nopon? He is one of the 7. Since Samon is the leader of the 7, that means he was Riku's master pawn, which, if I'm reading between the lines correctly, means Riku knew about the city the whole time! Plus, the Sword of Origin is tied to Melia's heart, meaning she must have known Riku forged and entrusted the sword to the right person, and that's why she looked at him the way she did. Sorry to bust all your theories about Riku being Alvis. Alvis isn't here, but that console A slot is still mysteriously open. They also put details about the colony ranks in Uni's quest, which, while not the most important to the plot, did play a role in a few hero quests and helped with understanding some parts. Similarly, they used Nia's quest to try and clarify that the worlds did indeed separate, but it being post-game only doesn't really do much to help the initial confusion or provide an explanation as to why. On top of that, there's also the issue of the side stories. Noah and Mio's are required, although everyone else's are tied pretty closely to the events in the main story, trying to wrap up threads they otherwise left hanging. They actually stuck the entire end of Shania's arc in Senna's side story. They chose to put the background of a major villain in a missable quest. With it being about her becoming a consul, obviously it's only available after her death, meaning there is no way to know about her sympathetic backstory before she tries to murder everyone in Chapter 6! While putting extra lore in side content is fine, some specific things they chose really feel like they should have been a part of the main plot rather than condensed into a quick quest. It's messy and makes things feel cobbled together. It's as if chunks were just cut and this was their solution. It's possible they got too ambitious, and seeing the SE art book really cemented that feeling for me. There's a good amount of interesting concept art in there, including the actual Xenosaga Zohar, which the life marks appear to be a reference to. It makes me curious what they were planning and never able to realize. All this isn't to say I believe the story is bad. I think when looking at purely through bullet point events, the premise and build-up are great. But when you zoom in and look at the scenes themselves, it starts to fall apart. Between raising questions just to leave them unanswered, foreshadowing that has no payoff, dialogue that feels flat and rambly, sympathetic villains that don't get enough time to be sympathetic, and important parts clumsily shoved into quests, the writing itself fails what could have been a truly spectacular story. It's not bad. There's a lot of good here, so many interesting themes and character moments, but their full potential is never explored. I don't feel it lived up to the storytelling standard Monolith Soft has set with the previous games. It feels rushed and almost unfinished, as if we're seeing a draft rather than a polished script. And if you're thinking after all I just went over that I simply didn't get it, you wouldn't be wrong, but that's not on me. That's a failure in the writing. I'm not going to say I'm perfect. There's a lot of dialogue in this game, and I probably did miss a good amount of subtext, but it is ultimately still the story's responsibility to provide the player with the tools required for understanding it. The fact that what actually happened in the ending was being so widely debated shows it failed to do so. When I played the previous games, even though I missed things the first time round, I still understood enough to enjoy the plot. I didn't need to watch lore and theory videos to figure out what exactly happened. I came out satisfied. Well, except for X, but that's for a different reason. My point is, I didn't with 3. I was confused, blindsided, and frankly disappointed by the amount of things that were seemingly ignored. I don't know if any of these questions will really be answered in the DLC story, but even if they are, it won't help how I feel now. In my opinion, here's some things I would have done that I feel would improve the story. Obvious part, another draft of the script. Make the characters more expressive with interactions that highlight their personalities and show what's in their head rather than stating it. Give them a few quirks to have fun with and can be utilized for breathers in this heavy story. Also, cut out a lot of the senseless babble and use that new free time to answer the questions that were raised, incorporate important questions to the main plot, and cast some foreshadowing. I would also have more quality time shown with the major villains to better establish them and their backstories to pique an interest before their major moments. To help with pacing, I would take some of those big optional areas such as Donga Desert and maybe some islands in Arethia Sea and move them around towards the end of the game so there doesn't need to be the padding that is Noah and Mio's side stories along with the ultimate vessel. Expanding Capricorn Peak into a more fully realized area would also be helpful. Oh, and throw the ending of Chapter 6 out the window because that just... yeah! The more I think about it, the more I find wrong. But now, I want to expand on some points and talk about the characters themselves. I didn't really fall in love with this cast on my first playthrough. That's not to say I don't like them or I think they're bad. Most of my complaints stem from the game, never giving me much reason to care about them other than the fact I'm supposed to. With backstories being poorly shown too late, arcs that just halt or never matter, and many character interactions that feel more like filler, it doesn't do this cast any favors. Going back and rewatching things as well as doing more side content, I find myself liking them more, but they didn't quite land with me right away. I don't agree with the opinion that this is the best cast. I believe it's a better cast than X, but not 1 and 2. Obviously, Taion and Uni ended up being my favorites. Uni is no surprise, she's everyone's favorite. Out of all the characters, she's the most emotive and carries the biggest presence. She steals scenes with her witty one-liners and British euphemisms. She has no problem speaking her mind and has excellent dynamics with basically everyone. Her lines are always great and brimming with personality. She's very entertaining, yet not relegated to simple comic relief either. She's the one that shares a touching moment with Mio. She tries to comfort Lance after Yorn first shows up. She struggles with her own fear. Although I do feel her arc just kinda stopped in the middle. She has trauma due to lingering memories of a previous death, but the most resolution it has is her small talk with Monica in Chapter 5. There's also something explored in her side story, but that's more about the colony ranks than it is her. I suppose it finishes, but it doesn't feel like it caps off this big weight she carries. Her moment in Chapter 4 was good, but I feel like she had more of a resolution with D. The last time he shows up, everything between them is just dropped. With Lance's arc finishing, Jay's redemption, Dee's backstory dump, and Nia's whole thing happening, it's so crowded they don't even give her a chance to have closure with Dee. Hers could very well be a story about healing from trauma, dealing with the lingering effects even though you should be fine now, but it's just lost in a messy execution. Trauma is never clean, but she doesn't take the step to open up about it until her optional quest, which leaves absolutely no room in the story to build upon it. She can't have a journey of healing in a linear story when the point to start is optional. I still loved Uni, but I'd be lying if I said her arc execution didn't impact my opinion of her. It's the reason she's only number 2 on my list. Number 1 goes to Taion. He first comes off as cold, but he's actually very sensitive. He notices Uni's handshaking, and while he doesn't immediately comfort her with words, he still offers support in his own way. He's considerate of Mio's time left, and even if he refuses to say it, he cares for his teammates. He's not just the pessimistic, well-read one, he's got layers, and those get developed. Taion is the character whose arc I feel got the most resolution. In the main story, the entirety of Chapter 3 left me satisfied. It showed Taion's histories, his insecurities, why he overthinks so much. It really tied up his character quite nicely. There was the watch he promised to Barry that they forgot, but to me that was minor enough to shrug off. It's somewhat addressed in its quest, although while you don't need to play it to wrap up its story, you'll still be rewarded with a fulfilling experience if you do. His history being the best explored in a satisfying yet emotional way tied into him being my overall favorite. What escalated that was the side content. I adored his writing and characterization. He's blunt, sometimes sarcastic, and has some real zingers. A couple characters really enjoy toying with him, and his reactions are always enjoyable to watch. Like one discussion where they talk about fashion, Uni calls Tana's scarf deeply uncool, and he just completely loses his composure. He also gets these smug smirks when he's satisfied with himself or proven right. Like, I talked about Uni stealing scenes, but Tana takes the cake in optional stuff. Now take the two best characters in this game, put them together, and you have one hell of a pair. I know Noah and Mio are the big ship, but honestly, I love these two so much. Their vastly different personalities played off each other so well, and I adored it. Uni is such a tease with him, but she also always has his back. He helps ground her when she needs it, leaving her knowing she always has someone to rely on. It's beautiful. Alright. After my rant about the end of Chapter 6, I should say I don't actually hate Noah, but I certainly did not come out of that story liking him the first time. The whole rushed ending really soured him a lot for me. Even though this group is all working together to forward a common goal, Noah is the obvious leader. The others pitch ideas, but ultimately it is Noah who has the final say in most of them. On top of that, sometimes it'll feel like others are getting their moment to shine, only for Noah to butt in with yet another speech. For all the talk about this ensemble cast, it feels like the game is giving me a gentle reminder that this is Noah's story and no one else's. The main character syndrome started to annoy me. On top of that, he never really has to learn a lesson. His biggest moment is deciding to move on in Chapter 6. This allows him to pull free the Sword of Origin, but it doesn't really change much about him. Noah's turning point as a character left me disappointed because it doesn't feel like he grew from it. Mio returns, it's just back to business as usual. His total mental collapse is completely swept away. He doesn't open up more as time goes on, and he doesn't get more passionate outbursts as he fights for what he believes in. He is a really reserved character and rarely gets outwardly emotional like Shulk and Rex do. Several times when others notice his distance, he brushes it aside with a "it's nothing" and goes back to sorting through it on his own. He's a very reflective person, but his nature doesn't give us much insight to understand his motivations. Noah himself just becomes more and more preachy as the game goes on. He's the reason this is the most spelled out messaging the series has ever had. One part I found really bothersome was his response to Shania's suicide. It basically boiled down to, she chose this, it was what she wanted, so we should respect that. Like, no, her choice was to end her life. I get you want everyone to have the freedom to choose, and that's what you're fighting for, but that is not the type of decision you should be supporting. In fairness, that was to try and comfort Senna, and he is a very kind and compassionate character. Although once in a while, they allow him to step away from the seriousness of their world to be a clueless dork. Sometimes it feels like he's sharing a single brain cell with Lance. It's hilarious. For the most part, this type of writing is in the side content, and that's where I found him the most likable. He's more emotive, a bit looser, he's not the only one making decisions, and you really get a sense of how much he cares for his friends. Maybe it's due to the often relaxed nature or sheer amount, but he just feels better in quests. Even his dream of playing different songs is something he only gets to do in a side mission. Out of all the cast, I feel the most strongly that Noah was just not the character I was hoping for. He's not bad, he's rather rounded, and when In is thrown into the mix, it adds a good layer of depth, but he wasn't for me. I can easily say he's my least favorite main protagonist so far. And I know many people adored Mio, but it took her a while to click with me. Despite being the heroine, she doesn't do much. For the most part, she just follows Noah without much agency of her own until the whole M business in Chapter 5 and 6. Then she's relegated back to just tagging along. Now, agency isn't a requirement for a good character, but considering one of the goals of this game is giving people a choice, I feel it'd be more thematically fitting if the heroine actually had more of an effect on the plot. Even even the Agnes Castle situation was more M's doing. Mio just went along with it. She does make some meaningful choices, but it's a relatively small amount, especially when compared to the overwhelming number Noah makes. She definitely has very good moments, a few of the highlights in the game, but a lot of those scenes were centered around either Noah or In. Sometimes it feels like she exists solely for their benefit. She never stood out in cutscenes either. Unlike Uni, she isn't very charismatic. A good amount of her lines just seem repetitive and come off as generic politeness. Her character in general feels discreet. She spends a lot of time just listening and taking in what others say rather than acting or speaking her mind. She's empathetic, resident, unwanting to burden others with her problems, and reminds me of Pyra in some ways. She's someone who's easy to sympathize with, so why did it take me so long to appreciate her? I feel my overall lower opinion of Mio is probably caused by her backstory showing up so late. For a lot of the adventure, I didn't see much of a reason to care, even though the game was telling me I should. Her briefly explaining her backstory to Noah and Uni in Chapter 4 just didn't grab me the way it was supposed to. Her life was almost up. She didn't mind for herself, but she believed he borrowed time and wanted to do something meaningful with it to honor Miyabi. She wants a legacy, and that ends up being hope. What her and Noah and literally all of Ouroboros embody. It's great, really, but it's something I quickly forgot about because it barely comes up. I also feel her side story didn't do her any favors. It shows the pain she has of losing Miyabi, why she was so special to her, but then Miyabi just comes back. No memories lost, no repercussions, she's the same as she always was. It cheapened Mio's tragic history as you learned about it because what she lost is standing right in front of her, and it lacked the build-up to be a what was lost was finally found story. I think a good amount of the writing choices is what ultimately put her in the just okay category for me. Mio is a great character, just someone I like the concept of more than the execution. Maybe I shouldn't use that word when talking about Mio. As for Noah and Mio as a couple, literally living hope, I think they work well together. Their relationship benefits from the contrast of how toxic In and Im's was, and I don't think they're characters you can separate from each other. I don't consider that a bad thing here. Their bond is pretty integral to the plot, and it's sweet. Although, I'll admit, I saw their chemistry, but it didn't really feel like more than a ship tease to me on my first go-round. They have good moments, but there was never anything that made me go, yes, they're in love! I do wish we got some more romantic scenes with them, but sadly the writing and pacing just doesn't allow for that. The implied romance came so quickly, and yeah, I feel it lacked a good build up to the kiss. Now, I liked Ryan, so it's no surprise I also liked Lance. He's the strong softie that's there to protect his friends. He and Ryan are very similar characters at first glance, although Lance had a little more going on in the story. His arc is about overcoming guilt and the anger that sometimes goes into the healing process. When Jay first shows up, Lance is furious. He'd been carrying this feeling of responsibility for his friend's death all these years. Then, the ghost that's been mentally tolling him all this time comes back just to wreck him even more. His anger is rooted in pain, and he has to come to terms with nuances to get proper closure with Yorn, allowing him to finally move on. While his story does take a backseat to everything else, you can see the effect it has on him, and it reminds you enough to keep it relevant. I like his arc and actually think the slow burn style it was presented in made it one of the better done arcs in this game. Oddly enough though, unlike everyone else's, his side story has little to do with it, which is good because that means it was basically the only one fully settled in the main story. The quest is more so about his state of mind and reuniting with Garvel's gang after they've been reborn, with Lance trying to set them on the right path. For some reason, they gave Lance a thing with children, and I am living for it! His bond with some of the child heroes is extremely sweet. I especially loved him and Fiona. His interactions with her and basically everyone in Colony Mew are just adorable. As for Senna, she got done dirty. Not only is her arc all over the place, but they use her side story to further Shania and Gondor's story, while she was relegated to a background character in her own Quest. I honestly believe she is the weakest main cast member in the narrative. Not because I think she's a bad character, but because it feels like they didn't know what they wanted her to be. They really tried to push the idea that Senna and Shania were two sides of the same coin, but it simply isn't true. Mio saw Senna struggling with being herself early on and cut that off. She had Mio's constant support throughout the years, and the game wants me to believe she's lonely and struggles with her identity? After showing me they sorted through that? She knew Shania for less than a week. They had one small talk together, and apparently that was enough to establish a deep connection between them? It just didn't work. It's like she was someone they just had zero idea what to do with, so they figured they'd use her for the same message Nia had in 2. The thing is, Nia's was much stronger because it had proper build-up and development. Even the one in the same duality was already done better with Noah and In. They didn't need to do it twice in the same game. As for the rest of her backstory, I still don't like how they framed Senna and Mio's relationship. She put Mio up on a pedestal like she was a celebrity instead of a friend. I get that's what they were going for, but these two have been very close for 7 years and she still sees her that way. All because Mio showed her some kindness, meanwhile others picked on her. Alright, I'm just gonna say it. I am so tired of the juvenile bully backstories they saddled on everyone. Tyon was made fun of for being too cautious. The Kavesi had Garvel's gang always gunning for them because reasons. Senna was mocked for reasons. And Mio, well, she's the only exception. She was too cool to be bullied. But was there nothing else they could come up with? I kept waiting for something really strong with Senna, but there was just nothing. Though Miyabi was her friend too, that whole thing is about Mio and Senna is left out. I find she doesn't stand on her own very well in the main campaign, sometimes feeling as if she's just there to be Mio's friend and nothing else. I was really hoping her side story would give her something deeper, but even that was stolen from her. But you know whose quest does do a good job highlighting her personality? Sagiri's. Her connection with Sagiri is handled so much better than Shania's, and it is honestly a joy. I said Noah was better in the side content, but his improvement is nothing when compared to Senna's. In quests, especially ones with Sagiri, you finally get to see what kind of character she actually is. You get to see her more compassionate and sensitive side in quests, where she's super quick to empathize and is easily the biggest crier of the group. It's sweet. I like Senna, but I honestly can't say I cared for her outside of the side content because her main story writing is all over the place and just doesn't let her shine away from Mio or Shania. Lance and Senna as a team were cute. I loved seeing them work out together and just try to be useful. I don't really have anything else to add about their relationship. I definitely saw it as the most platonic out of the bunch, but it was sweet. Except when they tried to commit suicide together, I am not recovered from that! Of course, this is a Xenoblade game, and that means, by law, there must be Nopon. We were gifted Riku and Manana. They aren't given much of a role this time round, but they're great together. Manana is our comedy relief Nopon, and I adore everything about her. Her interactions with Riku, her little comments in certain quests, her spicy attitude. She made me laugh on so many occasions. I love how passionate and excited she gets about cooking and eating. She's just a ball of fun. Riku is just a mystery. Why is his voice so deep? Why is he wearing a Rex wig? Why does he know literally everything but never shares it? That said, I liked Riku too. He's just a chill, fuzzy guy who repairs machines and likes gyms. He works well as a semi-mentor to Noah too. But that's our main party. I think a conclusion I've come to is due to the interlinking, there is a huge emphasis on memories and backgrounds when normally there wouldn't need to be. I think of Rein from the first game. He's a Defense Force soldier and grew up with Shulk. He has a history, but it's not something we need fleshed out with flashbacks. I'd say the same with Morag from 2. Hers is briefly explained and that little bit of knowledge is all that's relevant. Here, they try to do fully tragic and fleshed out backstories that play into their arcs for all 6 of the main cast. It gets crowded fast, and the payoffs of those memories often aren't that great. Some tie into the antagonists, like with Lance and Uni, but often just aren't given the time they need, which is a reoccurring theme here. Especially with the villains, which, yeah, they're not great. There isn't a single well-written antagonist throughout this entire game. It was just, oh, another faceless console. And aside from Z, N, M, X, Y, D, and J, I can't remember who's who out of this evil alphabet soup. I mean, there is W because of her design. Who made that? I know their lack of identity is because they aren't supposed to be individuals, just avatars that host the Mobius Desire. Thing is, while they fill that role, they aren't entertaining. It's not like Metalface or Malos showing up to taunt the heroes. They lack charisma. They're just some cookie-cutter, I'm better than you, and isn't murder so entertaining, with nothing else going for them. They aren't fun to watch, someone you love to hate. They're just there to be a boss battle and nothing else. Thing is, Mobius, while being a collective entity, is still made up of individuals. Keep in mind, it started as only X, Y, and Z. The rest used to be humans. Some consoles, like D, like M, like Shania, like Chris, and Triton, they still had their human feelings and wants, held on to their, I would say humanity, but D never had any. So some are allowed to be individuals that stand on their own, while others are excused from having a personality. It's a standard that doesn't apply to everyone. And I get it. There's 25 consoles. That's a lot of villains to try and flesh out in an already bloated cast. I'm okay with some being relegated to the villain of the week role, but just because they lack depth doesn't mean they need to be boring. You can have the most generic bad guy character ever and still have fun with them. I can see remnants of an attempt. They tried to give them little quirks, but after a while they all blended together because it was just different ways of saying, you're filth and I will kill you now. Even the leader Zed has this issue. I think as a concept, a villain being the combination of everyone's fears taken to human form is very compelling, but they don't do anything interesting with him. He just calmly goes around and is like, why go against the flow? And that's it. Living Fear, I feel, should be more emotional as fear is not based in rationality, yet the only time he actually shows some range is after Noah destroys his theater. You know, right before the last cutscene. We don't get any real quality time to know or understand him. He just gets an info dump right before the ending, and that's all we're left with. Zed, as is a boring villain because he's not more than his base component. His fear, everyone's fear of their uncertain future is such an integral part of the story, yet so much is left untapped. Why would anxiety try to quell that feeling by creating a world full of more anxiety? Why does fear of your own mortality lead to a world filled with mortality? We don't get these answers. I am also a little disappointed that what caused Zed to appear in the first place didn't get much of a resolution. N and M canceled out that desire which held Origin captive, but did that really just erase everyone's fear? Make hope conquer all? Zed gets compared to Zanza, and for good reason. The methods they use to perpetuate their existence are the same. Both of them use life energy as a power source. They look down upon the mortals they create, deny them a choice, and Mobius even tries to destroy Ionios to recreate it again. Just like Zanza. While Zed is not Zanza, I can totally understand why people thought he was going to be. He's even part of a tranny, X and Y also being true Mobius. X and Y are two characters I desperately wanted to know more about. Being true Mobius, I assumed they weren't ever real people. Then I did the quest acknowledging feelings, and the artifact you end up restoring from before Ionios' creation ends up being a painting. Someone in the city named it Siblings, and knowing Monolith, that has a meaning. That small white-haired child is X, no doubt about it. The hairstyle is exactly the same. That boy in red on the left looks a lot like Y to me, although I'm less sure. Oddly enough, the blonde kid reminds me vaguely of Klaus. Probably nothing, but this means they were actually people at one point and not just constructs like Zed. Were they in Origin? How did they become true Mobius? Why are they true Mobius? Which world did they belong to? This really piqued my interest, and I'm left with disappointment because I can't know more. X and Y died with less than the typical colony console got. They were so dull, and this single small quest made me want to know more. Was there story something left on the cutting room floor? The other villains weren't handled the best either. In is essentially a diet Jin. Now, Jin is one of my favorite characters of all time, and that's one reason In bothered me. I've seen his character done before and much better. When I compare scenes with him, there's no contest. One big reason is, again, say it with me, a lack of screen time and build-up. While Agnes Castle and Eternal Prison are highlights of his story, that's all he's really got. He didn't step in until the last third of the game, which didn't leave much room to give him many good moments. It's just hard to appreciate a character that you don't get much time with. If there were a few extra chapters for him to have more significance, I think he could have been on Jin's level. Stepping aside from the Jin comparisons, he does serve a different purpose in the story, and that's to be a reflection of Noah, a version that gave into despair while the other still has hope. He's a dark half, essentially. Narratively wise, I think it plays a very important part, and I like the contrast. The duality only adds to both of their characters, seeing what our protagonist could have become and what our antagonist could have been. I do wish we saw more of a connection, a hint that some part of In hadn't been corrupted and he held on to at least a piece of his old self. As is, he's played as too far gone until his last scene in Eternal Prison. His complete corruption is what ultimately drove M to seek suicide, but did she even try talking to him before making that choice? Did he become so selfish that he no longer cared for her feelings? We don't know because we don't see it. We see what made him this way, but we're not given any redeemable qualities until he actually gets redeemed. Although, speaking of characters like that, let's talk about Yorin. I hate him. I hate him so much. His whole deal just throwing himself a massive pity party and taking all his insecurities out on his old friends who cherished him. He felt he was lesser because they were more skillful than him, even though they still clearly let him know he was valued. They were good friends to him, and he tried to twist that and use it against them, as if his shortcomings were their fault. You know, maybe his friends are better than him because they were preoccupied with being a little bitch. He became corrupted and despicable. He didn't even want to kill them when they first met. He wanted to mess with their heads, relish in the pain he was causing them. And you know, that would actually be great for a villain. I liked how Yorin started, how he was toying with them and stood as a mental obstacle. But after chapter 3, he's almost completely pushed aside until his death. For someone that has such a big impact on half of our party's life, he barely gets any scenes. His first appearance is great, but his last shares a similar problem with Ins. They play him up as completely corrupted, highlight how irredeemable he is, then pull a 180 with him suddenly deciding he actually does care about his friends and once again heroically sacrifices himself for them. Next to the Queen's corpse, with her blood on his hands. They tried to make him sympathetic at the absolute worst possible time. In isolation, I don't think that scene itself is bad, but with the full context and how he just reacted in the previous one, it makes the placement very poor. I don't hate Yorin just because he killed one of my favorite characters, and I know, D is the one who actually stabbed her, but they were a team, and even Lance calls Yorin out on this. Although I can't lie and say the poor handling of Chapter 6 isn't what gave me a negative opinion on him. I realize he serves a very similar role to Mumkar, not just being another faceless enemy, but someone who the party knew and defected to the other side. Although, unlike Mumkar, he doesn't get the time to really play up that dynamic, which is ultimately what makes it falter. This similarity might be why they try to take a different path and redeem Yorin instead of keeping him as an antagonist, but again, they tried to capture something of a past character and just did it worse. Do I think he's a bad antagonist? No, he's as mediocre as the rest of the villains as far as I'm concerned. I just really hate him. Although, it is kind of strange, they seemingly split Mumkar into two characters. Jay might have gotten his plot significance, but D is the one getting compared to him. To even call D a bad attempt at an edgier Mumkar is an insult to Mumkar. I really glossed over D in this story, but I had a good reason. He's just kinda there, So he's an Agnian soldier who loved murder so much, I guess he wished he could keep murdering forever because someone made a Mobius and... yeah, that's his story. He also collects heads, and I feel like that's supposed to be a shock value thing, but it just comes off as hilariously edgy. I was half expecting to be able to find the Ferranis he stores them in, but it's not in the world. I guess they couldn't keep their rating if it was. Really, the only interesting thing about him was his connection with Uni, although after Chapter 4, when her arc stalls, that just goes away. With Chapter 6 being... Chapter 6, there wasn't really a resolution to their plot. Jay is the one to take him down, so Yui doesn't even get one last moment with him. I'd say he's the most charismatic out of the villains, and he definitely leaves an impression in Chapter 1, although after all the hype around Wild Ride, he just turned out to be such a nothing character. Oh yeah, Chris was an antagonist. Kinda. I don't really have anything to say that I didn't already talk about, but I do want to add it's doubtful he is Shulk and Fiora's son. He has the blonde hair, yes, but Shulk had blue eyes and Fiora had green. Chris's eyes are silver. Maybe I'll get proven wrong in the DLC, but I seriously don't believe he's their child. There is one last villain I want to talk about though, and that's Shania. Some people really like Shania. She comes at things from a different angle as opposed to the rest of the antagonists, making her stand out. She's the sole surviving daughter of House Reed, meaning her mom pushed for her to become an Ouroboros candidate instead of pursuing painting. After her father died and she fell out with Gondor, she had no one left to support her as an artist. So she strove to try and meet her mom's high expectations, obviously to no avail. This pushes her to one other chance in life, one where if she fails, she can start over. It's very sympathetic and understandable. However, again, they only give her background as she's about to die and send a side story. Oh my god, why did she take over Sis? Like, did y'all really have nothing for her at all? As it stands, she betrayed everyone, tried to commit genocide, returned as Mobius, burned the city, then tried to kill Gondor along with everyone else. You want me to feel bad because Gondor is a bitch to her? Because her mom held her to too high of expectations? When everyone else supported her artistic passions? At this point? It just came far too late. It is possible to make a character sympathetic in hindsight, but they test that too many times this game, and it really cheapens a lot of their big moments. I didn't feel for Shania when she committed suicide. If we had more scenes early on alluding to her history, her passions, maybe that would have piqued an interest. She also stands for the message about the powerful, in this case Mobius, being the only ones who have the right to choose. Considering the state of our planet, I think the commentary works, although I can't shake the thought that Shania's background made her the wrong person to give it to. Being the only child of a political house, that puts her in line to inherit that power. It may not be Mobius power, but it's still a significant position that gives her a voice and control. As for her ability to choose, her mother was the only one pressuring her to fight while she had an active counterforce encouraging her to paint. She made the choice to try and please her mother, so I can understand where the resentful and trapped feelings came from, but the fact is, she did have a choice. I did end up liking Shania at the close of her story, but I am disappointed she became Mobius. Not because it's done poorly, I actually think it's handled rather well, but because it wasn't what she wanted. She wanted to be reborn, forget and have a fresh start. I really feel it would have been more bittersweet if she was instead found in a cradle, giving Gondor a chance to reflect on how it wasn't just Shania's mother that contributed to this. She did too. She had the right thoughts, just the wrong words, and ended up deeply hurting Shania. I feel her actually being reborn in the cycle would have given both her and Gondor a chance to shine. Although as it stands, Shania, as Mobius, has the city's new location, dies there, and nothing comes from that because it's stuck in an optional quest and can't have an effect on the main story. How did she even find the city? That's the real question. How did she find the city? She literally just pops in there. Where'd you get this information, girl? Although, speaking of the angry goblin child, maybe I should discuss Gondor. I don't think you were supposed to like her at first, which I definitely didn't. Although I warmed up to her. She really is the most vulgar and outspoken child. Like, I fully believe she would throw hands at the toddler just for looking at her funny. It makes her charming later on, but initially she just comes off as a jackass. What doesn't help is seeing her flashbacks with Shania. They try to play it up as Gondor was always supporting her in her own way, but Shania clearly didn't know that because Gondor was too busy being a massive dick. She was a toxic friend to Shania and is a big reason she flips sides. It honestly bothers me that Gondor never faces any consequences for her actions. Like, her punishment is Shania's death. But just a hunch, I think that might have affected Shania a wee bit more. What actually made me start liking Gondor was the side content. She takes more of a leadership role, as customary for Van Damme, and her blunt vulgarity is quite funny. Oddly enough, though, her quest is about Turkins. It's very sweet, and I do like it a lot. I just can't help but wonder why they made this her quest while giving her and Shania's story to Senna. There are a good number of hero quests though, and while very few are required, they are still well worth your time. I want to take a moment to talk about a few of my favorite heroes because some of these characters are really amazing. Firstly, Valdi. He is a pure and innocent being who will cry if one of his machines gets hurt. His mind basically only revolves around Lepnis's, and it's just adorable how fixated he gets. He was part of an accident in his early terms and lost his arm, so his Nopon mentor made him a prosthetic, and that is just so sweet. Like, that's technology that doesn't exist in this world, because if you get injured that severely, you're practically left to be reborn. I also love his and Alexander's relationship. She has this big grudge against him, and he's just like, new friends! With no recollection that he kicked her ass in a fight once. You can really tell he was raised by Nopon, huh? Juniper is our non-binary lord who really said, yes, I will main a tri-stringer. They were part of some discourse over their actual gender. People didn't take their voice actor being non-binary themselves and saying Juniper was too as proof, but as soon as the fans got their hands on a data mine, the first thing they did was show Juniper is non-binary in the game's code. God, I love this fandom. I didn't use them much in combat because their class is really slow and frankly not that great. Sorry, Bleed, too much debuff resistance. But I did enjoy their story, and Colony Tau really stood out. I especially like their involvement in Colony Knight's quests. This is why the world shouldn't have separated. They pulled apart Kite and Juniper, and that's the real casualty here. And Xeon, funny potato man. No thoughts, only potatoes. Whole world must have potatoes. Ashira is basically Dunban's deranged daughter, and I am living for it. I think she might have ended up being my favorite hero. I just love how unhinged she is. Girl really out here beating the shit out of her own people for sport, pissed off her console, then lets her live because killing her there would be no fun. It doesn't stop there either. It goes deeper since as she ages, she recovers the memory and pain of her initial death. This leads her to seek a way out. Her quest ends with her and Uni forming a suicide pact, which is not something I ever saw coming. Ashira and Uni are also absolutely priceless together. Anytime the two of them are on screen is a good time. Now let's be real. The Full Metal Jaguar class is always gonna have a leg up. Gray is cool and edgy and also a loving husband. Like, him and his wife have complete trust with each other. His ascension quest is literally about his wife plotting against him. He falls into trouble right to her crony's base, only for her to be revealed as a double agent. She never told Gray a single thing, just knew he'd find and trust her. What a team! I really wish he had more quests because I was dying to see more of him. Fiona is such a good character too. She goes through so much, is actively manipulated and willingly so, just to make her friend happy. She might have my favorite scene of any hero quest. It's just good. Not to mention, her and Lance are really adorable, and her questline made me very attached to Colony Mew. It's so fleshed out. I have never been this bonded to a fictional village before. And Triton, can we talk about Triton? I didn't really care much for his class, but he is just the funniest character. Like, this man's entire story is he forgot. He forgot everything. Even most of his arts. He does get his kicks from teasing Lance and Tyon, though, whose interactions are always great. He's just one giant inconvenience with a heart, and I adore him. I may think Miyabi is a character that narratively-wise should have stayed dead, but that doesn't mean I don't love her. She is so adorable, and I really like how her quest is essentially the Great Tornin Cook-Off V2, except there's no Mithra here, so it's not quite as good. Still a very sweet character, though. Sagiri is a really interesting character, being human but acting like a machine. She didn't even have a name until Senna gave her one, just being called Number 7, which... nice reference. Her quest is about learning to think for herself and protecting her colony of elite child soldiers. Senna basically being a big sister to her is incredibly sweet. But... I do take issue with her, and by extension, her colony's clothing. There's no gain around this. She's a 12-year-old with her ass on display. On one hand, I feel this is meant to highlight how dehumanized they are, but on the other, I think her being conditioned to be as obedient as a machine and denied even the dignity of a name hammers it home enough. That said, I really like her personality and questline, helping out her colony, protecting them. It's really sweet, and there's a lot of interesting moments. Although I have to ask, what happened with Number 13? She just left, and I was expecting a follow-up quest, but no. The conflict of Sagiri's ascension is just left hanging. I hope she's brought up in a DLC quest or something, because that was just weird. But lastly, Ethel and Kamaravi. Main story-wise, it felt like they died just as they were getting going, which was disappointing. They had the freedom to choose, and they ultimately chose to purposefully end their lives. When they come back, though, they're actually very cute together. Kamaravi is this confused 10th termer who is determined to look after and protect Ethel, while first term Ethel devotes herself to taking care of Kamaravi. It's adorable, and Kamaravi even makes little comments about Ethel as you walk around the city. I was so excited to see where it went from there, but they're the only heroes who don't get an Ascension quest. Instead, you have to go to the back room of Colony Omega to find a growth pod, let Ethel rapidly age back into her 10th term, then the class ranks go up. There's not even a quest marker, you just have to find it on your own. It's such a letdown to a sweet and intriguing storyline. Like, there's no follow-up quests or anything. I understand since they're both main story characters, they already got a fair amount of screen time, but it didn't make this any less disappointing. Okay, only ones left are the queens. They're fine, I guess. Melia's quest is actually very good. It gave me some good laughs, and I think her writing is fine for the most part. Her being the Kevis leader kind of makes sense, as she was a princess, then Future Connected ended with her becoming a proper empress, but that was still only for the Hyentia. I guess she could have just taken the role as the world leader due to being a driving force for Origin, but that's all speculation. Now, Nia, on the other hand, yeah, she got the short end of the stick. Her quest is kind of a nothing one. I still don't understand how or why she's the ruler of Agnes. She hated studying to be a proper lady. She complained she never wanted to deal with the hierarchy. Even going on to show she didn't understand all the politics surrounding it. Yet here she is, the leader of a nation, put in a position where it seems she'd be so unhappy. Why is she here? Nia is also not a very technically minded person like Melia. Melia's people were at the forefront of technology, meanwhile Nia is guessing what the blueprints of Origin mean. If she was put in charge of this project, then why? Morag seems like the most likely candidate to handle all this, or even Mithra. I just don't see how Nia got herself in this position. This game raises a lot of questions with the connections to 1 and 2 that it refuses to elaborate on because it'll spoil those stories, and that is a huge shortcoming. I understand the reasoning, but this game was shown off as being a combination of the worlds from 1 and 2. Melia and Nia were in the very first trailer. People who knew that cast wanted answers, and instead they got barely a scrap of callbacks that amounted to nothing. The references, such as Aizel being Melia's right-hand man and fandom with Yu and Zuo, it doesn't mean anything. These specific two worlds coming together doesn't actually matter. It could be any two worlds colliding and the story would remain the same. Uni is never called a Hyentia, Lanz is never called a Machna, Mio is never called Gormati, Senna is never called a Blade. They're all just humans and the previous history doesn't play a part aside from Ryu's locales and the queens which you only latch onto out of love for the previous titles. This is the end of the Klaus saga, and there's no mention of Klaus. It's not that I wanted some big fan service ensemble, but this game was advertised as the two combining, and they just do nothing with it. They didn't even answer the basic question of how long it had been since the previous titles. If they wanted to make a standalone game, fine. Make a standalone game. What was even the point of mingling these two together if they weren't going to do something with it? And what was the point of Future Connected? What happened with Tyrea and Teelan's research, or Cole's play? Did he even finish it? The most information we get about the previous cast is that Rex pegged all three of his love interests and the worlds we fought for got ruined by the fucking alphabet. What was this game trying to accomplish? Really, even down to the core, there's the overarching theme of mortality, the legacy you leave behind, but then there's also the theme of choice, choosing your own fate, like there was in 1. Then not letting fear hold your life back, moving on and not living in the past, like in 2. And how the powerful exploit people, the government's control extending to who lives and dies, like in X. Not to mention, that game also dealt with the player survival and its own version of coming back, so 3 doesn't really do anything new. I think that's what a lot of my complaints boil down to. There's a lot of commentary in this game, but most were things the series has already done, and I'd argue they did it better before. Even with the characters, a decent amount are just mirrors of previous ones that pale in comparison. When you look at the game's story as a standalone, it's fine. It has issues, but it works. Putting it in the context of all that came before it, it makes me wonder what their goal was. This did not feel like the end to the saga. This did not feel like the payoff of perfect works we were expecting. Now they're talking about the DLC story being about the future of the Xenoblade series, and wasn't that what Future Connected was supposed to be? Wasn't this game going to be the decider, the one that wrapped up the trilogy? What on earth happened? Oh god, does this mean they're gonna do another numbered entry and leave X to rot? I guess I should move on to the side content. Since some people seem hung up on this, I want to point out I did not just rush through the main story. I stopped and did side quests rather frequently, and I believe at this point I have done every single quest in the game. And let me tell you, this is the best part of the game. The writing, character interactions, scenarios. This is where everyone actually gets to fully shine. The side content is what made me fall in love with this cast and world. While sometimes annoying to find, the optional discussions are almost always amazing. I started saving videos of them just so I could go back and rewatch them. I wish I had screenshots of the entire nicknames one. It's just so funny. Their banter in these small conversations just highlights how good the dynamics are. Everyone is so stupid and I love them. The quests are also incredible and the writing feels a step above the main story. I think part of my preference here is due to the fact that these quests tend to be a bit more goofy, which is more my style. I want something that doesn't take itself super hard serious all the time, gives me a moment to laugh and just have fun. This offers that. There's so many good quests too, like Zeon's entire potato line. He starts off as someone I don't really care about, then gets major into gardening to try and feed its colony, and this man and his potatoes. Everywhere you bring him, he makes comments about potatoes. He wants to spread his potatoes around the world. I love him. Also gotta love how when you were sailing the seas, everyone wearing eye patches, they completely leaned into the theme and gave us a pirate hero. The group starts trying to figure out booty, like, guys, you're asking what good booty is when Uni is right there. Triton's quest is just great. I mean, Lance gets spooked by a man with a fish. Not to mention his ascension quest. Even Noah, the morality of the group, loses his chill. If you think that's the peak of it, oh no! Triton's quests get even better. When he wants to get some special fruit for his friend, you're then hunting for Fruity Booty. I totally did not spend 10 minutes cackling at that line. They knew exactly what they were doing. I love every quest that involves this big nuisance. Now, Ashiras are already great, but they're made amazing thanks to dynamic with Uni alone. The two clash and play off each other so well, there's never a dull moment. Furthermore, these hero and ascension quests aren't the only times you'll see them. There's a good number of quests where the heroes will interact with each other, and it's great. These aren't the only good quests either. There's so many that are worthwhile, like one in Colony Tower where you investigate a rumor about how drinking from a spring makes you strong. And these fools, Tyon, of all people, just walks up and starts drinking water that actual monsters are standing in. God love this man and his future cholera. There's another quest where the gang go to Colony 4 because Uni heard about them having some prime steak and they all get poisoned and have to chase down who did it. That's quite an interesting one that falls up on a comment from the story. Not to mention, in Colony Iota, someone warned you about a woman who's super anxious to do experiments on Ouroboros and says we should steer clear of her. I knew I had to. I made a beeline for the North Gate and the entire party gets gassed and dropped in the desert for testing. Better yet, she's an option to ask for help in a later quest. You know I had to go there. She's just like, oh, I don't know anything about that, but if you could just drink this, and the gang is just, okay, we're leaving right now, bye! The mentoring line in Colony Gamma, when Lance finally gets chosen by the guy who just wants to stay the other side, he asks Lance to strip in the middle of the training ground. Lance, my man, just goes, okay, until the girls scream at him to stop, saying it's not appropriate. Then they can't figure out why it wouldn't be appropriate. Another good one is in the city, you find some drop sheet music and Mio really wants to know the rest of the song, so everyone goes out to find who wrote it. In the end, your enthusiasm remotivates the composer and everyone plays together in the park. It's so sweet, you just spend like 4 minutes just following a slow NPC. Oh, the one in Arathia City where Riku and Banana are like, friends need to leave, super strong monsters seal at this altar, but will only come out if make offering. And everyone is like, you know we're gonna have to do it now, right? Poor Riku, he's stuck with these absolute fools. But Sen is right, it is a very cute monster. I would enjoy a plush. I think these might be the best quests in the series, maybe even better than Torna's. I think it's pretty clear. Having a static party makes quests better. You don't have to worry about which character is talking to the NPC because they're all there. It leaves you with a lot more interesting writing options. They nailed it here. The interactions are great and what really makes these quests special. If it wasn't for this outstanding side content, I wouldn't care for this cast at all. The main story has left me that bitter. To somewhat loop back around to gameplay here, these quests are made rather painless thanks to the excellent navigation. I rarely needed to look up guides because the game did so well choreographing where the enemies and items I needed were. Often, it was as easy as hitting plus and looking for the closest warp spot. Finding random collectibles was also not too bad since the fabricators exist, although they do punish you with long animations. Of course, there are still some quests that are just tedious and navigation goes, figure it out yourself, but those are few and far between. If I do have to make a minor complaint though, it's how poorly spaced out these quests are. There's not many available until you start chapter 4, then suddenly almost every single one opens up to you between chapters 5 and 6. It goes from a trickle to opening the floodgates. Part of it I get. You can't really do quests for colonies until you liberate them, and obviously the further you get into the game, the more colonies there are to pick from. The hero and ascension quests are also prerequisites to many, as there is tons of quest chaining. I love them all tying together, but after finishing one, 5 more will pop up, and this is especially true in later game as the story progression flags are hit. While they aren't required, they expect you to do so much questing once Chapter 7 starts. The levels jump from D&J being 55 to Chris being 60, then the enemies inside Origin starting at 63. I was afraid I was getting over-leveled, only to further the story and find myself under-leveled. All that said, these quests are great, and I would gladly replay a number of them. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. But I've basically said everything I've wanted to say. I suppose it's time to wrap this up. Overall, I'm left feeling a bit mixed. The combat is super fun, but it takes a while to get going. The world is vast and cool, but the hallway-esque layouts take away from the openness this series is known for. The characters can be fun and lovable, but their stories feel incomplete. There's awesome cutscenes, then I'm watching the party argue about going left or right for 5 minutes. One reason I play these games is for the story, and this one just made me frustrated and confused. Will some of my questions and complaints be answered in the story DLC? Absolutely, I don't doubt that. However, it didn't do anything for my initial impressions and doesn't change the incomplete narrative we were sold either. Just because I can buy the rest later doesn't mean I'm okay with it. At the end of the day, it is still a Xenoblade, and 3 is a very good game. I can easily recommend it without any hesitation. I wouldn't mind replaying it, but I'd rather go back to 2. I'd prefer to play the quests from this game, but frankly, I don't want to go through the main story again just to get to the quests. So we've got a fun world to explore with great combat and interesting side quests, but a story that's kinda cobbled together with important chunks awkwardly pushed into optional content. Wow, who knew 3 was our secret spiritual successor to X? Maybe I went in with too high of expectations and my thoughts and opinions will change with updates in the DLC story. But as it stands now, 3 was a bit of a letdown. I don't regret my time with it, I still had fun, although I hope anyone whose first Xenogame is 3 gives the others a chance. Of course, this is all just my subjective opinion. If you liked or disliked something I had different feelings on, that's great. I'm not here to spoil anyone's fun or tell you you're wrong. I simply wrote this because I want to get my impressions down and put my feelings into words. I'm certainly no expert, my word isn't the word of the architect, and it'd be stupid to treat it as such. I don't speak for anyone but myself, and I'm completely open to others sharing their feelings and starting a dialogue. We might not agree, but I'm a Sonic fan. I'm used to being told I'm wrong. So what are your thoughts? Did you share any of my complaints? Do you have some of your own? What was your favorite thing about this game? I look forward to your responses, and as usual, I'll see you in the next one later. This is the point most people do big thank yous for watching their huge project they spent tons of time on, but you know, for your enjoyment, here's some of my recording bloopers. I had a lot. This script was a lot. Okay, only one. Wait, you do that. Okay, this makes no sense. Lance couldn't block the laser in his Ouroboros form, But Noah can do it with his hand? What the fuck? What is that gauntlet? I thought they were actually going to die for a moment. Main characters! And then was just content with it? Like, Buddy could have warped away and just didn't? I scared my cat. It's okay, Lily. It's okay. Oh god, Tyon, I love you, buddy, but what person sleeps with their glasses on? Do you actually need those things? You will break them! I can't say this line. This is a bad part of the script. See, flutes will give off different sounds depending on cat cries.
Now I can say definitively, there are things in this world.
That there is, Noah. You were. That is the longest pause I have ever heard in anything ever. They aren't given much of a role this time round, but they're great together. They're great. Help. Toying with them instead of a menticle. Why do I keep saying menticle? It's mental obstacle. God damn it, stop mixing the two words. Okay, I just have to stop and point this out because this happens twice in the game and I am just confused. Okay, like in chapter 1, Uni asks if Mio is an Offseer when earlier she was like, yeah, she's an Offseer. Why are you asking? You're the one that knows this! And then in chapter 4, Tyon is the one that's like, you are as well, when he finds out everyone's bored from the Queen, and like, you already know this. You talked with Uni about it at the end of the last chapter. Do you have memory problems? Why did they not just give this line to literally any other character besides Tyon? Because literally he's the one character that knows this already. Drove to meet her mom's high expectations. Obvious. God, this is a run-on sentence if I ever wrote one. To think for herself and protecting her Chalani. Purposefully chose to end their lives. You know, now that you think about it, everyone that Noah gives a speech to about having the freedom to choose just chooses to die. Like, Noah, maybe you should stop preaching. You don't have a good track record. Instead, you have to go to the back room of Colony I keep wanting to say Omega. It's still ingrained in my head.
What man sees a wall and doesn't want to tear it down, I ask you?
Okay, am I nuts, or did Xenoblade actually reference Ronald Reagan? Lily! Oh gosh, she wants to snuggle.
I will be different. Yoram!
This is who I am.
Isn't it?
What, you thought I could end the video without one more Sonic reference? You don't know me.